Are you looking for an amazing vacation getaway right there in the Laurel Highlands? Look, we all know getting everybody on board, on the same page, budgeting, it can be a real hassle to plan the perfect family outing, or maybe even a little romantic getaway. And boy, have we got one for you, a destination that will please the entire family. Have you heard about the best kept secret in Cambria County? And to be honest, it might even be Somerset County. We don't know! Thousands of adventures await in Mine 42, conveniently located right outside of major tourist destinations like Wimber and Elton. I can't think of a place I'd rather be than Mine 42 right now. They got that sweet 90-degree turn right there in downtown, a roller hockey rink in walking distance, and their own exclusive club too. Hey, maybe if you ask them nicely, you can join up too. But endless escapades will await just outside of town in the Orange Lakes, full of mine runoff, and no two experiences swimming in those lakes will ever be alike. You're probably going to come away with some kind of debilitating ailment, but what if you don't? What if you come away with something so beneficial to your everyday life, like a third eye or 2 additional arms to help carry groceries into your house? And the deals you're going to get at Bilo and Wimber, brother, you're going to need all 4 of them arms. So come on out to Mine 42 today and see what all the fuss is about. This message brought to you by Mine 42 Tourism Bureau.
Mine 42, Mine 42 is a calling to you, yeah.
Hey baby, this is beautiful Bobby Winters here. That's right, your master of ceremonies for Snydermania 8. But today I'm here to tell you it's time to put them youngins to bed because you are listening to Andretti After Dark. And it is now my privilege to introduce to you your host, coming from a moderately priced room at the Anna Linda Inn in deepest Burbank. He is the reigning Podski U.S. heavyweight champion. He is nationwide, and baby, you know good and well he is on your side. The Cambria County Coroner, Justin Andretti.
Yeah, it goes to the universe, it goes to Mars, it goes to Neptune, it goes to Pluto. You know, I know dudes in all them planets, Jack.
Cause I know everything about you. I know your strengths, and I know your weaknesses, yeah.
She took my credit card, she took my horse, she took my money, she went to Hawaii and spent $5,000 on assorted men and papaya juice, Jack.
Will you stop? And the t-shirts are too tight too, Billy.
But the cream will rise to the top, oh yeah.
I don't know.
It's still real to me, damn it.
This is Stone Cold ET, and I want to order a couple cheeseburgers, and that's the bottom line.
All right, welcome to the first episode here of Andretti AD, Andretti After Dark. My name is Justin Andretti. I am the Podski Network's United States heavyweight champion. The man has been making towns and riding miles up and down all over this place, all over this whole country for a long time. So, you know, you might have heard me and some of the guests here today on the Podski with John Baker, or maybe even the Tooth and Nail show. You know, over the course of time, we do a lot of wrestling talk here on the show, but we're starting to do a little bit more too. And kind of what this whole thing is that I just got to a point where, you know, I started to realize that I had a lot of stories I wanted to get out there, and I have a lot of friends, a lot of relatives all over the country that are professionals of what they do, and I kind of wanted to get them on here and let them tell their story and talk a little bit about their industry and what they want to do. But obviously, there's going to be a little wrestling on here today too that we're going to get into down the road here. But that's kind of in a nutshell why we're doing this, just to get more out there and tell more stories and kind of give back a little bit to people that we think deserve, you know, a little bit of a shout out here and there. We're gonna do a lot of that, you know, here today too at the end. But you know, I'm really blessed to be able to be here. I got the Mongoose here, who you've probably heard on Tooth and Nail and heard on the Podski a million times. And we also, for the first time ever, we got the Gross, and the Gross has been referenced a lot over the last 8 or 9 months since the Podski started. I bring his name up a lot about, you know, some of the crazy things that we did, you know, throughout our life. So, you know, that's what it is. There's going to be mistakes here and there, inevitably. So just bear with us here. And I really wanted to thank our all-time quarterback, John Baker, for giving us this awesome platform and for his help with everything and walking me through Audacity and all that. He really is the quarterback of this whole Podski network, and definitely the right guy for the job. So, Baker, we're grateful for you coming up with this idea and giving us these options of adding more content here and doing your thing for sure. So
really quick, big ups to you, John, because To piggyback off of Andretti here really fast, the tooth and nail we talked about before was born out of old computer message boards in the early to mid 2000s. And then we were able to give that a modern spin on the audio format. And this wouldn't have been something that we would have ever been able to bring to fruition if it wasn't for you, John. So not only the fact that you gave me and Andretti a chance to come on here as many times as you did, speak and talk about everything from, Kanzati's to Eaton Park to, Lex Luger. We appreciate it all, man. And so big ups to you, brother. You're good at what you do and we're grateful for it.
So Mongoose, look, I mean, I'm really appreciative of you too. I mean, obviously the three of us that are on here right now go back for 1,000 years. We've been friends for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years even. But, I'm really grateful too for you to introduce us to Baker and to, we had an awesome time out here and for WrestleMania weekend or WrestleMania week, I should say, where I gotta say, man, Baker is probably the only person that I've ever met that I've spent an entire week with every second of every day, and he didn't want to kill me and I didn't want to kill him. So that's a pretty big thing to say. So I mean, I really wanted to just put over the show. The Podski is the main show, every week, and we got the Tooth and Nail. Hot Shots Wrestling Alliance is what Baker does every week on YouTube and on audio too with JC, who's a great guy. We did the show yesterday. We did a little bit of a really quick Forbidden Door preview because the Mongoose is going to be out of town next week. So me and Baker and JC jumped on, just did a really quick Forbidden Door thing to throw up and talk really quick about that, which was a lot of fun. I listened to that back today. So if you get a chance to listen to that show ended up being pretty good. But you can catch us on social media. The Instagram for the Podski is @the_Podski. On YouTube, it is @the_Podski, all one word. And you can find me on Instagram too at Cambria County Coroner, all one word. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. Got all the housekeeping stuff out of the way, and we're ready to jump right into this thing here. But I'm super grateful for you guys. I know it's been a little bit of a challenge to figure out work schedules with 3 different time zones here, but I'm really grateful for you coming on here and doing this.
And now, we would be remiss if we did not introduce the guest of honor. If you wouldn't mind, because I came into the fray, I don't know, probably 15 years or so after you guys, got able to get down and get into all kinds of shenanigans throughout your childhood and teen years. So, Mr. Andretti, for anybody that is new, if you wouldn't mind teeing us off with a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you're about. We can then get into the homeboy Graz, and then I would love to tie this in a bow together and explain how I got to meet both of you. So that would be absolutely wonderful.
Well, I think everybody back home in Pennsylvania that's going to listen to this show is probably going to know exactly who I am. So to keep kayfabe and to not break kayfabe here, we're going to keep with the Andretti name here to make it more consistent and make it a little more logical and not jump around from name to name. But it's no secret, obviously, who I am and who my parents are and whatnot. And we're trying to really take care on this episode, especially, that we don't get any heat with the neighbors because my parents are still back there, right? These small town people, we don't want to get any heat with anybody. So, we got a neighbor next door that, has got a great nickname. We're going to call him Otter in the show and not call him what his real nickname is. Just keep some kind of anonymity a little bit here. But, look, man,
famous and really quick, the famous Von Erich family down the road. With all the brothers and then sprinkle in a couple of young Von Erich sisters. So that's something that I got to make sure that we establish early on too. Von Erichs, you know who you are whenever you hear this.
So we're gonna that's official. We're gonna refer to my relatives as the Von Erichs.
Without question, you can't have that many kids and not be called the Von Erichs.
Oh, look,
it could be the Grahams.
Let's hope it turns out a little bit better than it did for the real Von Erichs.
That's what I was just going to say. It could be the Grahams, but both of these are incredibly, terribly tragic stories. And so, yeah, we'll go Von Erichs around. At least the Von Erichs were all really good looking.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. They are good looking dudes. So, so for me and the Graz, we basically met when he was a student in my mom's fifth grade math class. So Graz, do you want to tell that story real quick about how you and I officially met?
The greatest story. Saturday morning, Just sitting there one day watching cartoons, eating some Fruit Loops or Fruity Pebbles, whatever it might have been. All of a sudden, knock on the door, and there's this kid standing out there. I saw him once in a while, come up to his mother's room. Didn't really know him, nothing else. And all of a sudden, he goes, "Hey, dude, you want to come out and play or what?" Meanwhile, I had his sweatpants pulled up to his knees, had a hoodie on, rolled up to his elbows, and this cat looked like he wanted to go get in some trouble. and that to the T is how we met.
And that was what, 30, probably going on 35 years at this point, I would think, right?
Yeah, at the very least, yeah. And the very first day, just a quick segue, he had me steal a kid's bike.
I did not have you steal a kid's bike.
You did.
I actually forgot. Look, man, when you meet a new friend, you got to you got to throw them right into the fire and see if they're able to hang or not.
Well, I shouldn't say steal. We really didn't steal it. We just ribbed the kid. Is all we really did. And being I was the bigger kid with the mustache already, I told the kid I wanted his bike, and he sort of let me take it.
Which I could absolutely imagine is very true. That 9-year-old Graz would be mustachioed, walking around with 17-inch pipes, probably a drawn-on tattoo, because the real stuff was on the horizon. So yeah, I could see all this. Probably a Michigan Wolverines starter jacket in some capacity, depending on the time of year. If not a Michigan Wolverines starter jacket, then maybe like a Jalen Rose tank top or something like that.
Jalen Rose tank top. You want to talk about intimidating somebody today, and even inadvertently. So today, I'm out in the garage doing some stuff, and I'm blasting some Black Sabbath, Ronnie Dio era Black Sabbath, and I see our neighbor who we don't even know because we just moved in here. We don't even really know this woman, but she's an older woman. She's probably in her 70s. She came out of her house to do something on her stoop. I don't know, she was like sweeping it or whatever. And I walked over there with the music blasting and told her, and basically probably yelled at her to yell over the music that I had a half a dumpster out here if she wanted to throw anything in the dumpster because they're going to pick it up tomorrow morning. And she looked a little frightened, to say the least. So that was definitely an interesting thing from today.
I would, if you wouldn't mind, can I get a shirt and shorts combination, please?
I was wearing a Jay White shirt, first of all, and I was wearing Virginia Tech shorts.
Perfect. That would have been my question. Should have been, which wrestling shirt and what college shorts did you have on whenever you came over here to?
And what's even worse is I probably haven't showered in 2 or 3 days because I just been doing nothing but working and just passing out on the couch at night. Because we've been doing nothing. We're still on. I mean, we're basically unpacked at this point, but we were still moving couches in and all that stuff yesterday, and it's been quite an adventure, just to say the least. So I'm sure I was probably not in the best mood, and I had Ronnie Dio yelling behind me, and I'm yelling at some old woman to use our dumpster, if she wants to throw anything away. So that was pretty good from today. But I got everything cleaned up.
I was just you walked out there looking like majesty, stinking like man, and sounding like Satan. Like that is a heck of a triad, man. Absolutely wonderful.
I should have just told her, I should have just screamed to her, the sun is just the moon at night, is what I just should have yelled at her. Little Ronnie Dio. So other than that, I mean, so Mongoose, you want to talk about a little bit about how you kind of got into the 3-man band here at one point?
I'll tell you what, man. So this is a long and winding road. So as a Ute, way back in my middle school, late middle school to early high school days, I had a friend, we'll call him Joe Coyote. And Joe Coyote had taken me to the Darwin Gym, where we had grown up and
Darwin Gym.
Right.
We can say evolution. It's okay.
I was using Darwin Gym as my medical facility. Do you know what I'm saying? Like just to keep it completely kayfabe. So Coyote takes me to Evolution, and at Evolution, I had there were a couple of recurring characters in the Grand Theft Auto that was my life at that time. And one of them that I had seen, whom I had mistakenly placed at the time as an NPC, was the Graz. And so in the same way that you would see a person, walk into a wall or just do the same thing every day whenever they were, whenever they're in the Grand Theft Auto type game, I had seen this tan mustachioed man just get his swell on. And it felt like if it didn't matter if I was there 8 in the morning or 8 at night, this dude is in here pounding weights. Okay. And so I was introduced to the Graz from Coyote a couple of times. And then a couple of years later, I happened to be back into Evolution or Darwin's, whichever you'd like to call it, with another friend of ours. And we'll just call him Strawberry Tom. And so Strawberry Tom had taken me in, and we got to talking with the Graz. And I come to find out that I got a lot in common with this dude. And so one of the things that I was really, really interested in was his establishment of the Kilt Club. And then of course I was very into weightlifting and things at the time. And then we also had a relationship that was forged on pro wrestling. And so these talks began to expand. And as they expanded, it just turned into some bro time. That bro time then led us to a soiree at the Midnight Buffet at Eaton Park. There I had seen a tall fella in a Tabula Rasa shirt that just happened to be our main man, Andretti. And from there, the rest is history. We all had gotten together. One of the first big get-togethers that we had was actually WrestleMania 18 in 2002. Whenever I heard the Graz say that he was going to order 24 honey barbecue wings from CK's, I knew that I immediately found a friend for life. And we watched every wrestling pay-per-view together. We bought all those old NWA TNA shows together. We would go on to, random forays into different, sporting goods stores and things like that, looking for nonsense. We had the young man experience. We all sort of got to go through together. And I went from adolescence into manhood on riding the backs of these two winged birds that happen to be Andretti and the Graz. And so for that, I am forever thankful for you two. And here we are, 21 years later, hopping onto a pod, chatting about not only stories from yesteryear, but, getting to spend some time together in the now times.
That's great.
And definitely you got to go give a shout out to CK's.
Oh yeah, we've mentioned CK's a couple times, and the old man driving up and down the road in front of the house, not knowing where to deliver the food. That's been a running joke.
Yeah, no,
for that summer,
that dude is a real life NPC. So whereas I thought initially I would have just walked in and you would have been the guy that's always in there hammering weights. I've come to find out that you were, obviously not only a real person, but a deep person and a cool dude. That guy driving up and down the road from CK's, we've decided and we've labeled him as a true NPC. Literally he's still driving up and down Centennial Drive nonstop, just waiting to drop food off at the old man's house. Hours after it's been ordered, probably cold, and with a bill over $100.
I mean, it's just amazing how much money we spent there when we would watch those Laker games and wrestling.
That summer, we kept them open.
Yeah.
I would say it was easily, 2 times a week? Maybe 3 times a week?
I'd probably.
I mean, I remember times I think we just showed up and just ate dinner there. And we'd sit down and we'd just play, college football or something stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, without question. And Graz, we've been down the road on the pod a couple of times. Not only that, but you want to talk about places we kept the lights on in. We've spoken of the Ryan's trips, the Ponderosa trips. And then all those midnight buffets. That's the crazy thing, man, is to think how many times we would get wings at 6 p.m. and then head over to the park at midnight for you to find old Shorty that would say, pick me up, girl, shake me like a salt shaker.
Crazy side story. So you guys remember that old guy that used to work there, a little goofy, and he'd man the bar?
I think so, yeah.
Like a short guy. I don't know if there's anything really seriously wrong with him, but he looked a little different. When I was home last year, he was still out there.
Really?
Yeah, like a short little guy, just looks weird.
Were you there? Did they have the midnight buffet open, or
no,
were you just there
They closed the midnight buffet.
Yeah, they closed the midnight buffet. He was working like the salad buffet, for dinner time.
But I genuinely feel like that midnight buffet kept people off the streets. I seriously, I'm very honest when I say that we got into no trouble, and most of the reason is that we always just went to eat at 11:30.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? It's pretty wild.
I think going from the midnight buffet to the salad buffet is like getting let go from WWE and you have to go wrestle on Impact.
Without question, that poor old man. Welcome to the Impact Zone.
Who the hell wants a salad when you can get fucking as much French toast as you can eat
with potato pancakes?
Yeah.
And unlimited syrup.
What a shame they closed that down, man. That's a shame.
Well, Andretti was just French toast.
Yeah,
that's all that dude. French toast.
There's not many other things that you need to get, man. That's every once in a while. Whenever we go there, and it's waffle time. I just stack that plate up with waffles, man. I understand. Yeah. The game is to be sold, not to be told, brother.
Well, we have some pretty big life news here. I know at least me and the Graz do. So the Graz just changed jobs, and I'm super excited for him about that. And obviously, we just moved, here into this house. So it's been just 100 miles an hour, man, 24 hours a day, trying to get things set up and realizing, what we don't have and what we got to order and what we got to, try to sell. I've been trying to sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace and, made a pretty good amount of money on that already. But there's just it just seems like it just never ends, man. But because you're about half a week here into your job already, man. How are things going with the new place?
It's definitely a lot better morale wise, and just overall, I feel better about it. Right now it's just a lot of onboarding, so in my industry, I got to do a lot of the OSHA training, safety training. I got a shitload of quality training, that we got to go through. So that's really what I'm catching up on here. Tomorrow I'm actually meeting, they're having some of the big wigs come out from Georgia. We're going to go over and check out the lab and stuff. And go through some T's and C's and, all the fine stuff. But definitely looking forward to something here. I consider this my last jump of a job, thinking, if I can get 15 to 20 years out of this place, like it did my prior, I'll be good to ride off to the sunset.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. In Mongoose, I know you. I know you said you guys are going to the beach, this weekend, and you've been going down there with your family and your in-laws and whatnot for a long time. What else you got going on over in your neck of the woods back home?
The first thing that I have to say is that I am incredibly blessed that I spend 7 days with my in-laws and not only look forward to it, but enjoy it the whole time. That is just because it's part of the cost in doing business whenever you get married is, and I don't mean to say it this way, but if you do it right, you know what I mean? Like you marry not only your partner, but you become, part of their family. And the assimilation is not always easy. And I do have wonderful in-laws. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. Last year was the first year that we did the Mrs. Mongoose party down there in North Carolina. Wonderful time had by all. I am very much looking forward to watching Collision and then Forbidden Door with my in-laws, especially my father-in-law. My father-in-law is a character, and if I can get the stars to align, I'm bringing him on to either this show or the Podski to do a review of the Forbidden Door show, because his opinions are going to be the most electric opinions you had ever heard, no matter if you had, no matter if you know him or not. And so we have that on the horizon. After that, I'm doing some summer work up here at the job that I work in, trying to ready that. Mrs. Mongoose has come on board at the firm that I'm currently employed in. And so the one thing that I've told my coworkers is that you're going to love her. I just hope that she loves me afterwards. You know what I'm saying? Because this will be a lot of time spent not only like in the commutes and whatnot, but just in the day-to-day thing. One of the things that really sort of brought that to light as to, oh my gosh, here's where it comes, is that I had to dial a client's phone number a couple of weeks ago. This is right before June, and the first couple of digits of the phone number were 666, and so I call that one. And I got done, and I go into the main office area, and I say to some of my coworkers, I said, "Hey, I just had to call this client." I said, and I dialed the first couple of numbers are 666, and somebody says, "Oh, that one gives me the heebie-jeebies." And I said, "Well, I dialed it, and you know what I thought to myself? Mr. Crowley," and I just bow that, and the one secretary that works there, she says, are you going to be doing all this whenever your wife starts here? And I said, you know what, I'll probably be able to do this once, and then that'll be it. But I'll get one in. So I am really looking forward to that though, dude. And baby Mongoose had a wonderful year. She just got through with kindergarten. We got first grade on the horizon. She did an art camp last week. She made a kitten mug and a whole bunch of other random things like that out of clay. And so, yeah, I got no complaints over on my end, brother.
Yeah, me neither. I really got no complaints. And just the fact that I was able to walk to the grocery store, and it was super nice yesterday, and I didn't have to worry about the typical LA stuff because we're not living in LA anymore. Just like it kind of just hit me yesterday finally that I had this a moment of clarity that things are actually getting better and they're good. You know what I mean? So that was a big feeling. It hasn't been easy being in LA for sure, the last year, but now it's good. Now everything's good. Now we're in a house and things are going a lot better. So definitely looking up there for sure with all that. So I kind of wanted to just say real quick here too, getting into the show, this show is going to have two parts. It's basically going to have two connected parts. The community swimming pool outside of South Fork, PA, known as Liberty Park, which is where we're all very familiar with. The three of us are very familiar with, and in the 1977 Johnstown flood. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the flood. It turns out that water has played a hell of a pivotal role in all of our lives, and it affected me indirectly. In a sense, it wreaked havoc on my mom and dad's wedding. It was an insane event that killed about 84 or 85 people in the area, and is often overlooked for its devastation. So we're going to get a little bit more into that. It was also crazy timing here with the Graz, who was born, I think about a month early from the 77 flood. So, and it almost destroyed the pool. It almost destroyed Liberty Park too. So, Graz, do you remember having any pictures from your mom or dad or anybody from looking at that stuff from right around the time you were born? Do you remember any of that stuff?
I remember growing up before the original house burnt down there in '85. They had tons and tons of Polaroids of just right there down along the road by the underpass and stuff. That bridge was completely taken out. If you remember that old dam up the creek,
right above your house,
road there.
Right above your house.
Yeah, they had pictures from that, collapsing and stuff. Yeah, so it was actually rather remarkable when you think about it, especially with the history of Johnstown, where the '89 flood, the '36 flood. Where they said, oh, it's never going to happen again. And, lo and behold, it did happen again. So
sure.
that definitely water played a huge, huge part in our upbringing in more ways than one, indirectly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had I had my Aunt Carol on here earlier, Liberty Park legend and somewhat of a historian. So she lived through it. And I recorded this piece earlier with her because of the timing issues with everyone's work schedules. But, I'm looking forward to hearing you guys' feedback whenever you get a chance to listen to the show back. But she's got a lot of really great things to say about it. And then that's gonna transition us right into the Liberty Park stuff itself. We got some great stories about the pool, man. I mean, it's the people we encountered, what the place meant to us, some lists of best arcades, the best lifeguards, and then we're going to dive into some spooky stuff about the area too, that we either experienced ourselves or grew up with, and Bigfoot, aliens, ghosts, all that kind of stuff, man. We grew up with all those stories and we lived through it ourselves. And then at the end, we're gonna put some people, like I said, into the unofficial Liberty Park Hall of Fame. But I really wanted to say this too up front. I know we're kind of joking around here about, calling certain people Otter instead of what their nickname really is, or, calling my cousins the Von Erichs instead of what their name really is. But I just want to put this out there. We're going to do our best to not use people's last names, but please just understand that all of us grew up in an area where people are very much referred to by their last name more than their first name. So just understand that everything we say is out of respect. And if you were included in this, it's because you left a strong impression on us 30 years later. We're not gonna say anything crazy about anybody. And we think about you all the time. And you're part of the memories that we had growing up and during our impressionable years. So just understand that. And we're doing this for fun. I think you're going to enjoy these stories too. Maybe you'll take you in a trip down memory lane. These stories that have meant so much to us too. But we're looking forward to jumping into this here with the 1977 flood. So, we're going to, like I said, I recorded this part earlier here with my Aunt Carol. So we're going to listen to this part right here with Aunt Carol, firsthand account. And I got some notes here from my mom too. My mom was nice enough to write down about 4 or 5 pages of handwritten notes talking about what it was like for her and my dad whenever they were going through their wedding planning and the fear of this sudden storm. It could have ruined their whole wedding, where they might not even have gotten married, right? And that could have changed the whole course of my life. Maybe I wouldn't even be here at that point if something crazy would have happened at that point. But we're gonna be posting pics from the 1977 flood. They were taken by my mom, and just make sure you check that stuff out. If you're so inclined, you can check that stuff out on my Instagram at Cambria County Coroner if you want to do that. But again, those were taken from a first person perspective, seeing the devastation right down the street from their house, about 200 yards away from where, everybody lived. So pretty crazy pictures, pretty crazy stories, but we're going to jump into that right now with Aunt Carol and get her perspective on all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. We are here today with my Aunt Carol, who is my favorite aunt on my mom's side, especially. She's been gracious enough to come here today and give us a little bit of a firsthand account of kind of what it was like being in the area and living through the 1977 flood, which was a lot worse than people outside the area really kind of understand. To understand kind of the geography here, I mean, we're talking about Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which is located in western Pennsylvania. It's about 75 miles east of Pittsburgh. It's located in a valley. It's at the confluence of the Conemaugh River and the Stony Creek River, and this is a place that's had 3 very significant floods over the years. Well, it just turns out, that one of the other hosts that's going to be on here, the rest of the show, the Graws, was born about a month earlier than when the 77 flood happened. And for myself, it didn't directly impact me in my life, but it did directly impact my mother and father's wedding. And my Aunt Carol's going to speak to that a little bit. So look, Carol, we're happy to have you here. I'm fortunate and very blessed to have you here today for sure. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to jumping in. I don't think we've ever talked about this. I don't think we've ever really talked about kind of what it was like with the flood and what it was like, just with my parents' wedding.
No, I don't think we have. So yeah. It was a very memorable day.
Yeah, for sure.
Not only because of the wedding, but because of what happened.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of context here about the area and the flood. So there was a very major flood in the Johnstown, Pennsylvania area in 1889. About 20 million gallons of water rushed into town. About 14 miles away was the dam. It killed about 2,300 people. That was in 1889. So that was the first one, the first of three. That was the South Fork Dam. It was very close to our houses where we grew up, probably about a mile, maybe a mile and a quarter away from where you grew up and where I grew up across the street. But, despite that insane tragedy, there was really no significant flood control measures were ever enacted in the area. And then that led right into the St. Patrick's Day flood of 1936, where the snow melt and 3 days of rainfall killed about 30 more people. So, it's just an area that's had some weather tragedy after weather tragedy. And it's a shame that nothing was ever really put together to try to stop that between those two floods between 1889 and 1936. But then that leads us right into the 1977 flood, which has been crazy. But, it's wild to think about how that really wasn't that long ago. And there's a lot of people in the area that have very vivid memories about what that flood was like. And I kind of Frankenstein together a little write up here about kind of what the 77 flood really was like. And again, this is just for context so that people understand really what this was all about. So, despite no changes in flood protection after the 1936 disaster, the St. Patrick's Day flood became the catalyst for major federal support to rehabilitate Johnstown. The Works Progress Administration came in with the task of digging out the town. After the flood wreckage had been cleared, long-term public works programs began, such as replacing sidewalks, roads, and bridges. But to many, it simply wasn't enough, and the White House was swamped with thousands of letters from locals pleading for help. Franklin Delano Roosevelt responded by touring Johnstown and authorizing the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to channelize the rivers through town. The goal was to increase the capacity of the rivers to prevent the future flooding after two of them had already come through. But despite two major events within 50 years, the belief at the time was still that these major flooding occurrences were very rare. And the Army Corps of Engineers had designed the flood control measures for protection against a standard flood. Protection to the 500-year level was simply not economically viable. So at the time, the belief here was that these were super rare and there was not really a need to spend the money to protect the city for 500 years, right? We're just trying to get through right now a general flood, routine flood, so that in case something ever happens again, we're going to be covered, right? Well, we're going to find out that really was not the case. So routine tests and checks were completed in the years leading up to the 77 flood. Then in 1974, the Corps of Engineers issued a report titled "The Potential for Future Flooding in the Johnstown Area," which failed to grasp the attention of town leaders and the people of Johnstown. And we've seen this in the past too. This happened after the, leading up to the 1889 flood too, where the recommendations of experts in the area were not heeded. And then on July 20th, 1977, a line of severe thunderstorms stalled over Johnstown, dropping as much as a foot of rain in some areas within about a 10-hour period. Small streams, Solomon's Run, Sam's Run, Peggy's Run, carved new channels and smashed through expressways, apartment buildings, factories, and homes. An earth and water supply dam collapsed just outside of Tanneryville, just outside of Johnstown and Tanneryville, which is right outside of town. The Laurel Run Reservoir, one of multiple dams that failed that day, despite Laurel Run Dam having a 42-foot-high spillway. In a combined total from the failed dams, about 130 million gallons of floodwater and swollen streams overflowed the channel system in Johnstown that was designed to have left the city flood-free. However, according to later estimates by the Army Corps of Engineers, the water level could have been as much as 11 feet higher if that channel system had never been built. The National Weather Service later estimated that this amount of rain in that location should happen less than once every 1,000 years. Well, we got 3 of them within about 80 years, so that didn't last real well. But the death toll would end up reaching, unfortunately, about 85 people, with property damages reached around the 300 million mark around the time. Now, $300 million in 1977 is about 1.5 billion today. So that's quite a significant amount of money here. But hundreds of people were left homeless, took shelter in churches, schools, fire halls, even the dormitories at the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown. And after the immediate crisis was over, many small trailer park homes were established to accommodate those that were left homeless. Despite millions spent to rehabilitate the Johnstown area, the economy never recovered. Many businesses shut down or relocated altogether. The city's population decreased nearly 20% in the aftermath of the flood as people moved away to rebuild their lives elsewhere. So as you can hear, just with that little recap that I put together from multiple websites, just a devastating time to be there. And to go through that and to be a part of seeing, your hometown kind of go through something. Okay, so I have my notes here from my mom, so who was not able to come on the show, but she sent me a decent amount of handwritten notes here. So I think since this is going to lead us right into how much this really affected her wedding, in my dad's wedding at the time, who were living right there in Liberty Park. I kind of want to just read through my mom's notes and get this story out there, from the horse's mouth. So we'll start right here with my mom's notes. So she said, to quote Charles Dickens, "It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. For Paul and me, it was the best of times. We were getting married. We had gotten engaged on Christmas Eve, 1976. Plans were made for making our wedding day set for August 13th, 1977. We were to be married at St. Joseph's Church in Beaverdale, and the reception was set for St. Peter and Paul's Church Hall in Portage, PA. All the preparations were going smoothly. I bought my wedding gown at Janine's in Johnstown and went back a few times for the alterations. Our bridesmaids and groomsmen, maid of honor and best man were all set. The invitations were all sent. Paul took care of the booze." And of course he did. And had the bartenders lined up. Who were the bartenders? I got to jump in here. Like who were the bartenders? What gang of ruffians did my dad put together for this?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be this comedy to find out. I knew all these people, growing up as a little kid, so I'm sure that was a fun.
There were a lot of people there, though. I know that. There were about over 500, I think.
Really? Okay. I didn't know that. They had a much bigger wedding than I did. So.
Oh, much.
Hey, you can't hide money, right? That's. All right, so let's see here. Where are we at here? Okay, we also had a live band set to play. Dr. Eric Wazork was in it before he was a doctor and married. You have any idea what the band was that played at the wedding?
I forget the name of it, but I know Dr. Wazork played the accordion.
Okay. So, accordion band. All right. Awesome.
They played a lot of polka. It was a big Polish wedding.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I had no idea that he was in a band that played at my parents' wedding. The film was made by the women of St. Peter and Paul Church. That was a lot of money at the time, about $4.80 per plate. They ended up paying for 575 people. So I mean, that's at the time, that's a heck of a lot of money. Everything was ready. Church ceremony at 2:00 and reception at 6. And then she put. Then came the worst of times, the Johnstown flood of 1970. I mean, look, my mother was a teacher. She knows how to write and storytell, so it's pretty great to read through these notes. Especially she did it handwritten notes for me, which is unbelievable. So, she said the worst of times, the Johnstown flood of 1977, the night of July 19th. How it rained and thundered and lightning all night long. It wouldn't let up. We got about 10 to 12 inches of rain. The Sandy Run Dam above us broke, which is right by the Graw's house. The Sandy Run Dam above us broke, sending tons of water down the creek. Houses were washed away. When the rain finally stopped, we were able to see all the damage in our neighborhood the next day. Our beloved Liberty Park swimming pool was partially gone. Route 219 was undermined near the park, and roads everywhere were broken apart. Our neighbors below us, the Cooks, were stranded on their second floor. They lived along the creek. Their house was filled with water, mud, and dead animals. Elmo's junkyard was right there too. Junk cars were washed away. It was a big disaster everywhere. We had no electricity or water. I remember Mom cooking up as much of the meat as she could from our fridge, and she had our little Pullman camping stove. Paul and his buddy Mike, that's Rat, right?
Right.
Made their way. I'm trying to read some of her. She's getting a little shaky. Okay, so I'm trying to read her notes here. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, Paul and Rat made their way home from Beaverdale to our house. Mom was feeding them, telling them to eat as much food as they could. And for my dad and for Rat, that's probably not, you don't got to push too hard to get those guys to eat. So that's good. We had no water. My mom asked our neighbor, Bud, when he thought we would get our water turned back on. He said, our pipes are wrapped around Lamb's Bridge. That's not a good thing. We didn't have water for about 2 weeks. The Army brought in water buffaloes for us to get water. My mom was worried, no electricity and no water, and the wedding was coming up. So that's something I wanted to ask you about, just to pause there real quick. The water buffalo thing, I had no idea about. So where did they put these water buffaloes?
I'm not real sure. I think they were on the Park Road. I remember that they brought in some like bottled water from the Coca-Cola company that was there in Richland. And so we had water that way. But if I recall, they did have like big tanks of water.
And those were for everybody in the area, the community.
For everybody, right? That's right. Yeah, and we went down to Liberty Park. There was a spring there, and we got water from that little spring. So yeah, she's right. We were without electricity for a week and without water for 2 weeks.
That's crazy.
And we had people who were going to stay at our house. So for the wedding. So, and like she said, it was August the 13th was the wedding. So my mother was frantic.
I'm sure.
But,
why wouldn't you? I mean, why would you not be, at that point?
That's right. That's right. So we didn't know what was going to happen.
That's crazy. Okay. So she said Johnstown was a total disaster again, first in 1889, then in 1936, and then again in 1977. Why did it have to happen now? I was thinking 84 people dead this time. My friend from high school lost her life that night in Dunlow. I didn't know that. Actually, I did know that. She got swept away, I think. She got swept away in the flood. Yeah, that my mom did tell me that. She did tell me that one time. Yeah. She and her sister and her nephew were on their back porch when it gave way and they were thrown into the raging water. I mean, that's unbelievable. What a crazy story. I guess 2 of them died, 1 survived. But was battered all over her body. So sad. Looks like one of them lost their son and their sister. And I still think about them and miss them every day, she said. So we get on here. Okay.
Your cousin, Paul Paternick, he is a dentist, and he helped identify some bodies through their dental records.
Wow. That's, what a horrible thing to have to do,
Right, because some of the bodies were not identifiable by their features because they had been in the water for so long.
Yeah,
so they had to go by dental records.
I was reading today about the Laurel Run Dam flooding through Tanneryville, and it said on one of those sites it said that there's still people that are missing from that.
Really?
Tanneryville, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's unbelievable. We're not gonna tell too many Leo stories on this podcast because Leo's gonna be on for his own. He's got so many crazy stories. I want to do his own episode. But what I remember, and probably like I'm gonna say it was probably like 96 or 97. He and I walked down along the creek all the way down into South Fork, right? And there's right before you get to Bealtown, there's that like open plain where it's like a floodplain almost, right?
Yes.
There were still cars. There were still partially submerged cars that were in that mud from the 77 flood.
Wow. Well, a lot of them might have been from the Elmo's junkyard.
It could be. Yeah, that could be.
Yeah,
that probably is what it is. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. I mean, we were just walking through there, and it was all overgrown with trees and everything. But we found cars. We found cars sticking out of the ground and overturned and everything. It was crazy. And I have no idea. They put in like a there's like a water treatment plant or something in there now in that spot. So I'm sure they took everything out of there and it's not there anymore. But that was, to be 20 years after the flood, I mean, it was pretty crazy to see that.
Right. Your mom mentioned the Cooks. They were actually on their roof at during that when the water was coming through their house. They had big trees and things coming through, and she was a nurse, and she told my mom she thought they were all going to die because they, all that water was coming through.
I guess it was months and months until they got everything cleaned out because they were really right in the firing lane of where that flood came through.
They really were, and the road that went across the creek was washed away. So that we were kind of isolated. We couldn't get from our house up to St. Michael. And also there through Gramlingtown, that was all washed away. So the only way that we could go was down through South Fork, that area, or up around on Rager's Hill Road and over into Richland and Geisttown that way.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that Cook's house stood through that, because there were houses above the pool, right down there by the Gramlingtown Bridge and everything that got completely washed out of there.
Right. I know there was one of my school teachers, as a matter of fact, my 7th grade teacher. They had a log cabin that was there along the road, and they had to scramble up the mountainside, the hillside behind them in order to get away from the raging water. So they were lucky that they weren't killed, but their house was washed right away.
I mean, it's so hard to wrap your head around just the volume and the pressure that comes flying down a hillside when a dam collapses, right? And that the one above our, where we grew up, wasn't astronomically big. I mean, it was pretty big. It wasn't the biggest dam in the world. It wasn't as big as Laurel Run, whenever that one broke. But just the fact that it came down that hillside and caused that much damage and washed houses away,
right.
and took out part of the pool, took out, the whole side of Liberty Park, the swimming pool, which was concrete, that had been there for at that point, probably 40 years, just to have the pressure to be able to do that and to wash away those roads, even a mile down the road, and haul cars all the way down to South Fork. It's pretty incredible to think about that.
It really was.
Okay. So then she said, I remember walking on Liberty Park Road down near the park a few days after the flood, met up with some of my neighbors, and we were talking. I told them I didn't know if Paul and I were going to cancel our wedding plans or not. Didn't know if anyone would even come to it. Art, who owned the pool, told me he thought people would come because it would be a nice time after all the devastation, that's nice of him to say that. I appreciate him telling my mom that. So the cleanup began. My dad, so that was my grandfather, your dad, went back to work at Griffith Cooster in the Woodville section of Johnstown. It was a mess and had to be cleaned. Paul, my dad, worked on the railroad, and they cleared the tracks, and everyone else cleaned. Our house had no damage, thank the good Lord. Just a little water in the basement. The Johnstown business people, thankfully, it's you hate to say, thankfully, when other people have had so many losses through this, but luckily we were high enough up on the hillside that nothing came up that far, really.
That's right.
Just the rainwater and whatnot. The Johnstown business people cleaned mud. I remember being able to get to Johnstown to get my gown. Fortunately, Janine's was on the 2nd floor and my gown was safe. My friend Diana was having a new ring cleaned at one of Johnstown's jewelers, and it was washed away in the floodwater. I mean, wow, that's crazy. The jeweler replaced her ring, but she said it wasn't the same. She missed the one her husband had given her. So, I mean, look, it's the stories like that make these tragedies just horrifying, right? I mean, you say it's just an item, it doesn't, everything can be replaced, but when you lose your engagement ring or you lose your wedding ring in a flood that just had nothing to do with you losing it yourself, I mean, that's really sad to hear that from somebody. Let's see here. Well, it turned out that we did get married on August 13th, 1977. The church was okay. The reception hall was okay. The roads were pretty well, and we had water and electricity at our house. 2 of my bridesmaids from out of town were able to make it, Linda from Stoneboro and Judy from Warren. We had a rehearsal at the church Friday night, and then a pizza party at Morris Tavern afterwards. I can't disagree with that. Morris's Tavern, I'm going to plug them right here. They won the first Laurel Highlands Pizza War. When me and T3 did that, they got 2nd place last year. I'm sure they're fired up and try to make a big run here to win that thing. So let's see here. Father Napick married us. Father Napick, shout out to that guy. He was always a good dude. When I was growing up and everything. My dad walked me down the aisle. All went well. Our little glitch. The kneelers in the church were polished, and Paul got polish. Paul got polish on his knees on the white tux pants. Wow, that's not good. I'm sure you had to pay for that. That's not good. Let's see. Linda, a bridesmaid, used some kind of cleaner to get the stain off. Somehow I didn't get a stain on my gown. Don't know how that happened. The reception was fine, and I think everyone had a good time. We figured there were over 600 people there. We paid for $5.75, but some of the guys just came to drink. Hey, you can't blame anybody for that. That was not the end of the story, though. When Paul and I went back to the motel in Evansburg, where we had reservations, we didn't have reservations. I don't know what happened. So we towed about 3 counties trying to find a motel room on our wedding night. We couldn't find one. All rooms were taken by flood workers. That's crazy. There wasn't one to be found. So we came back home. Paul and I were going to live in the apartment above my parents' house since my 2 bridesmaids were staying at our own house. My mom and dad were, this was a little bit blurry. I'm going to do my best here. My mom and dad were sleeping in our apartment, above the house. My sister, which is you, was sleeping in her bed. Very late, I asked my sister to go to the couch in the living room, and Paul and I got to bed. She was very groggy and reluctant. I said, "But it's my
nice way to
put it." So she moved to the couch. My parents were surprised to see us at home in the morning. We opened presents on Sunday and then left for the honeymoon at Niagara Falls. On August 16th, 1977, we found out that Elvis Presley had died. I remember a woman in the lobby of the hotel yelling, "Elvis is dead." I worked as a teacher and Paul worked on the railroad. Let's see what else he has. She's got here. 46 years after the flood, we're still together. It was a journey and life is good. So, I mean, I'm really grateful for her to put all that on paper. And I even told her, I was like, I want you to save those notes and I'll put them in frames, when I come home next month. I just want to have it. Yeah, I just want to have that stuff. And I can hang it here in the room, or just to have that story about, what it was like when my parents got married. But I mean, from your perspective, what was that like, having to go through a wedding and help out with all that stuff, when all that was going on?
Well, like I said, it was a time of uncertainty because we didn't know if we were going to get electricity back or the water. And, if we're going to need to give all the guests a bucket of water to go to the bathroom or whatever. But that part worked out. But like your mom said, they weren't able to find a hotel room. At that time, they had a reservation, but they gave it to somebody else because they didn't get there in time. And of course, they didn't have a credit card at that time. So they went all around the place. And then around, I don't know, it must have been around 2:00 in the morning, I hear this, Carol, wake up. We need this bed. And I was like, no, because I was tired, I don't know. She said, oh, come on, it's my wedding night. And I said, okay. So I got up and I went into another room. So your mom and dad spent their wedding night in my bed.
Unbelievable. That's crazy. Well, she said she had a bunch of pictures too. I guess she took them. I mean, they look like they're from, something that was like a home camera, that are just wild pictures of what it looked like. And I'm going to crop these pictures and get them posted up on social media, and I'll plug all that later. But just some of these pictures of just overturned cars, man. And there's just, it looks like a nuclear bomb hit this place, just right down the street from our house. It's like what, 200 yards from our house. We've got all this devastation that just totally went through here, and it's just crazy to see this stuff. But I want to ask you, do you remember how long it took to get the pool reopened after that? Because obviously there's a lot of, my mom said that they came through and cleaned everything up and kind of reset 219 and got everything good on the hillside, cleaned all the debris out and all that pretty quickly after that happened. But I mean, how long was it until the pool was back open?
I don't even know if the pool did get back open, to be honest with you, because it was pretty well damaged after that. I can still visualize the hillside of 219. It was like caved in. But a big part of Liberty Park was damaged. So I don't know. I don't remember if they, fixed it up or not, or if they just demolished it all. at that point. And then they put in a trailer park there.
So do you think that trailer park was part of what I read earlier with the almost like temporary housing from people that had, homes destroyed or they lost their jobs and things like, is that how the trailer park started?
I'm not sure about that. In fact, I didn't even know about that part of it until I just heard you say it. And that thought crossed my mind. Might be. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, the pool. I mean, the trailer park had been there as long as I was born. So I have no idea at that point.
Right. Yeah, that's too bad that you didn't get to experience the park.
Yeah. I mean, it was so many great stories about growing up, and going to the pool every summer, and it just being the social mecca of everybody at that point. That's where everybody went to hang out, all the local kids and everybody from the surrounding areas.
Actually. Right.
Yeah. So my mom had told me that that grandma had walked from Fifficktown with her siblings and with her friends all the way to Liberty Park, which is about it's almost 3 miles one way, to make that walk. I mean, to go there and back in one day, I mean, that's got to be 4 hours of your life, if not longer than that, But it's pretty crazy to think that people were walking there from that far away to, so early. I mean, that had to have been at least 1940, right? I mean, at that point, I mean, she would have been, maybe even like 38 for her to
be late 30s, early 40s, I would think.
Yeah. Do you have any idea about when the pool was built? I mean, I looked online. I couldn't really find anything about a definite of when the pool had been established. But at least the late 30s, it was there for sure.
Right. I think the Hutzels are the ones who started it. But it was the place to be. It was a nice gathering place. Before 219 came in there, it was really a nice wooded area. They had picnic areas there and a little merry-go-round, and it was a very nice place. And I think that's why Mom and Dad actually built their house there. So, and then they had the little grocery store there too, and people would come to get ice cream and things like that on their way down to Liberty Park.
Sure. I never even thought about that. But yeah, you're right. That is probably why they did that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, but things change, and that flood actually did so much damage that it really did change a lot of things in that area.
Yeah, I think that the thing I found was about 20% population decrease, whenever the flood came through. I mean, that was the start of the end, right? I mean, then after that, you get into the 80s. And the steel mills are still going, but now we're starting to lose jobs and we're having layoffs. And now it becomes, the standard of living starts to go down. I think I didn't really notice it until I was probably about 13. But when I was about 12 or 13 and probably like 92, 93 is when I could actually see it as a kid. You know what I mean? Because you grow up in it, you don't even know that things are happening. You have no idea. You think your parents are rich. Everybody thinks their parents are rich when they're a kid, right? You don't even know that. You don't even know what you're even living in, right? But like to actually see the decline and to see just jobs, people losing their jobs, and things are not going well. I think it took till about 92 or 93 for me to actually start seeing that. But I mean, look, it was an unbelievable place to grow up, and within our little ecosystem right there, at Liberty Park. I mean, you meet so many people, and you get to hang out with the neighborhood kids and have a blast at the pool, all summer long. And those summers were endless, at that point, when you're a kid. So do you have any memories about going to the pool whenever you were growing up?
Oh, sure. We used to get a season ticket every year and go down there and, hang out with our friends. And, they used to have like a little stand where you could buy popsicles for a nickel and big candy bars for a nickel. And you were really hitting the big time if you had a dime and you got a glass of soda. That was something special.
Yeah.
And they had pinball machines, and that was where I put my nickels.
I told the other guys in the group chat that we had, prepping for this, I said that you are not allowed to go to Liberty Park without quarters, right? You have to have quarters for the arcade every day. And if that meant stealing them out of your mom's purse or stealing them, my dad used to have a plastic Pepsi cup, a big plastic Pepsi cup that he would keep in the cabinet in the kitchen. And he would come home from work with a bunch of change and throw a bunch of change into that cup every time he'd come home, right? Well, in that time, everybody still used paper money and used change, right? So I would dig through that thing and steal quarters out of that thing every damn day. And he knew, and he started yelling at me, and like I would tell him I didn't do it or tell him that I'll stop doing it. And then the next day I was like, I'm not going down there without having at least 4 or 5 quarters in my pocket to go play games.
Wow.
So, you gotta do it. It's one of those things like you had to have money to go down there and hang out for sure.
Well, you were hitting the big time with a quarter. I only got a nickel.
Yeah. So there was a tragedy down there. I think that should be at least mentioned. We don't need to name names, but did you have any recollection of that, of somebody drowning at the pool? I think it was in the 60s or the 70s, right?
Yeah. I don't know exactly when it happened, but yes, I do recall that. He was a young trumpet player, as a matter of fact. He was really good too. And I guess he got caught. I don't know if it was the air filtration system or a pump or something, that he wasn't able to get away from it. And the owners, who was a physical education teacher, jumped in, tried to get him out of there, and he couldn't pull him away. So he had to jump out and turn things off. And unfortunately, he died. So they tried to resuscitate him, but it didn't. Of course. Didn't work.
I mean, it's also crazy to think that pool had been there for so many years before that, and nothing had happened. I mean, at least that we know of, nothing had happened where something like that had happened to somebody. It's just really sad to hear that. It's such a place that place that has so much good energy and just so many positive memories and positive vibes about that place, that everybody I've ever talked to, stuff I've read online about people that memories of Liberty Park and stuff like that everybody looked forward to it all the time. It's such a great place to go and spend your time as a kid in the summer and all that. Just to have those instances now and again, like the flood or like like a tragedy like that it's really sad to hear that kind of stuff.
They had a dance hall too, but they, unfortunately, by the time I was old enough to go, they had stopped having the dances down there. But I can remember seeing all the cars going down, and I could hear the music playing, and so I really wanted to go. So you'll have to ask your mom about that. I think she got to go.
So I think she did go a couple times. But I want to ask you, did Grandma ever do that? Did they ever walk all the way up from Fifficktown to go to dances at the pool?
That I'm not sure of. I know my mom loved to dance, but I don't know if she did that at Liberty Park or not.
Yeah.
I know there was some in the South Fork area.
Yeah, I think that's where she probably went a lot. It was just the ones in South Fork. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She and her friend Reba.
Nice. Any other thoughts you got on the pool, or any memories you have of any particular stories you want to put out there into the universe at this point?
No, it was a nice area to grow up. All the kids got along together. We'd play baseball and kickball and marbles and, Tin Can Alley at nighttime under the street light. And we would just have a lot of fun. So very good memories of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're lucky we're fortunate to have grown up in a little small community like that, where everybody was pretty good. We never really had too many problems. And I think even in the times where I went to the pool as a kid, like over the summer, because people came from everywhere. People came from all over the place, and sometimes we would even be surprised that a family would drive from so far away. I mean, there were people from like Davidsville and places like that where they would come in and swim at the pool, that we would run into every summer. But, I think that for the most part, any of the instances that I remember where, there were people getting in fights or something like that, it was all just people from outside. It was never like our community that had really any issues. And it was really a special place to grow up for sure.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Well, hey, and Carol, I love you very much. I'm super grateful for you jumping on here and doing this. I mean, I know you took time out of your work day to get on here and chat a little bit, but I'm
Well, it
super,
was a lot of fun. Thanks
yeah,
for having me on.
absolutely. I'm super excited about it. I'm sure we'll have you back at some point, and we'll figure out more stuff to chat. Maybe we'll talk about home ownership. We can what it's like to have to repair homes. We can talk about that at some point. So that might be a good one here for another time. But I really appreciate you coming on here. And definitely we'll talk soon, and we'll definitely get together soon too.
Okay, take care.
Yeah.
These turbulent wars have raged in our homeland for 3 long years. Skies full of pepperoni grease. Streets red with marinara sauce. Our children fight in the barbarian arenas of every local township in hopes of winning a single, beautiful onion. And yet the Laurel Highlands pizza wars continue. This year will see the pizza warrior himself team up once again with local favorite T3, as they desperately attempt to settle the score, to help end these mindless battles, and crown, at least for 1 year, who is the new Laurel Highlands Pizza Wars champion. But bad blood remains. After last year's surprise, Marlene's Pizza took the championship from Morris Tavern. Can Morris Tavern get back on top?
Unjustifiably in a position that I'd rather not be in, but the cream will rise to the top, oh yeah.
Will Marlene's repeat as champion?
What just happened? They got the holy you-know-what beat out of them nationwide. And I don't mind telling you, I was wearing these $600 custom-made lizard shoes and this $13,000 Rolex when it happened.
Or will a newcomer arise and upset the already fragile pizza balance? This July, it will be a war you wouldn't believe. From town to town, county to county across western Pennsylvania, throwing more crusts out the truck window than ever before. The war rages on.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that discussion right there with my Aunt Carol, who had a lot of great perspective from somebody who lived through that tragedy, and the notes from my mom and everything were pretty awesome too. There was a lot of stuff in there that I didn't even know. There was a lot of things that she said in there about people that played in the band at my parents' wedding, and the amount of people there. I had no idea there were that many people at their wedding and everything, but that was pretty crazy to hear all that stuff. So jumping right back into it here. I know, Mongoose, you said you had something you wanted to say about the local area.
I do. So one thing that I want to build on that I have to say fast is that Papa Mongoose has a story, and I wish that I would have been able to speak with him before we got on here. But I do believe that it was a yellow Mustang, and I do not remember the year or the specificities about it. But it was like his dream car, and that car was lost in the flood. That it was something, down payment was down, whatever it was. It was 1977, so it was right about the time that he was going to be either graduating high school or had saved up the money for this particular car, and that car got lost away. And so that was one that always stuck around with me whenever it comes to that particular event. Now, what I did need to say is that when you had mentioned last names, because we've moved to 3 different parts of the country, and Andretti, you've literally crossed the entire country, over the course of the last 20 years, I strongly feel as that Western Pennsylvania is the only place that I've encountered where you refer to people exclusively by their last name. And I had to absolutely retrain myself whenever I moved to where I currently reside to say people's first names whenever I'm talking to somebody else, because I find I sound like a total outsider. Have you guys encountered something similar?
Well, let me tell you this, to piggyback off of that. It got worse for me. Because when I first moved out here, I jumped right into coaching. And when I was coaching, you call everybody by their last name, right? That's what it ends up being, especially with football, but we end up calling everybody by their last name. So I actually feel like I got worse with it.
Yeah, well, that's a very underrated thing to say, because that is something that, whenever I'd spent my 7, 8 years doing, where, that is the way that you go about it. And then you get into civilian life and you call somebody, especially if it's somebody in like a higher ranking professional type thing, like it's the most endearing thing personally for me to say it in that way. It's very personal, you know what I'm saying? But it comes across as very much disrespectful to you know what I'm saying, to the people that are outside of the circle. So what do you got, Graz? Anything out your way?
I actually influenced, like I said, the past company I just worked at 15 years. I actually influenced where majority of us actually called each other by their last name. because for some reason
you implemented it.
Yeah, like the guy that used to work under me. I literally, his first name was whatever, and I just started calling him by his last name. Same thing with my quality manager and a bunch of the other guys. And some guys we still call them by their first name, but for the most part, that's really how it went. So you take the boy out of Western PA, but you can't take the Western PA out of the boy.
Oh, I'll never. I mean, that's perfect. That you couldn't have said it any better than that. That's for sure.
Out there colonizing the Mountain Time Zone. I love it, brother.
All right, so
actually, we got our own time zone. We're actually Arizona time.
Well, the thing that I love about that, here's the one thing that I'm very envious about in Arizona, is there is no bigger jig that we live through day by day, year by year, than the daylight savings time thing. All right.
Yes.
All this is that somebody somewhere decided to plop in daylight savings right around the equinoxes just to throw off all of our internal vibes, man. And I do like that Arizona says, enough of this, light is light, dark is dark. There's a, and I don't know if this is a true like Native American proverb thing, but it's something that's been attested to them, is that they had said that, only the white man would cut a foot off of the end of the blanket and sew it to the top of the blanket and think that they made more blanket.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? And and that's all daylight savings time is. It is such a JIG, man, complete jiggery. And so the fact that Arizona doesn't subscribe to that, I got a lot of respect for that state.
That's great.
And I'm thankful they don't, because it's already bad enough when it's 110 at 9 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
So being worse. So
yeah, for sure. But the second part here that we're going to jump into together, now that we talked a little bit about the 77 flood, was the swimming pool. Liberty Park swimming pool, which is a place where we grew up. Look, I wrote a little thing here. Long before social media was ever invented, our social network revolved around a summer epicenter, our big local community swimming pool known as Liberty Park. The pool was the gathering place, not just for locals, but also for the entire surrounding area. For those of us too young to be able to drive to the mall, or didn't have the money to bribe Graz's older brother or cousin Bobby for rides, the pool was really the only place to meet people from other schools. And by that, of course, I mean girls. And generations of teens, preteens, and adults frequented the pool, some for their entire lives, summer after summer. And looking back on all of this 30 plus years later, I think we can all say pretty confidently that we would give anything for another seemingly endless summer of swimming, trying to drown our younger siblings and relatives, pumping quarters into arcade after arcade, eating cardboard pizza that couldn't possibly taste any more delicious. And then in those evenings, after hours, having wacky adventures with our friends and with our relatives. And for us, that pool meant everything. It was what we did all day. It was what we talked about doing all night. Wake up and repeat. And although the pool is sadly no more, the friendships we created and memories that we still have to this day are periods of our lives we could not possibly put a price tag on. And I'm again, guys, I'm just so excited to be able to come on here and just talk about some of these crazy stories. And I know this is going to trigger even more memories that we have, going back in time here and doing a little time trip for sure.
So I need to jump in really fast, because this is what's crazy about this. Is that I went to the Liberty Park pool for years, from the time that I was able to splash into a kiddie pool until I was in late elementary school is when I believed it closed down. And I'll tell you what, man, like the crazy thing about this is that it wasn't until I was in like third grade that I realized that it was even in my school district. I didn't have a proximity for.
Well, it's one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest districts in the whole state.
Yeah,
in fairness to you as a child.
Right. And what's really crazy is that my mother's side of the family was all born and raised in Johnstown in the West End, or resided in Cambria City or whatever. And those relatives, they would pick me up, and when we would go to the pool, we went to Liberty Park. And so I had always assumed that it was a Johnstown thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, because again, I didn't have any proximity for space or how close it was to anything. And it wasn't until I got into the middle elementary years that I realized, oh my gosh, so many of my friends are here. Do you know what I mean? And then obviously you get older and you get into middle school and high school, and it's talking about these Liberty Park memories. And, it's really crazy, because when you had said about meeting people from other schools and everything else, that my Johnstown city family would take me there because it was the local pool. And that made me feel like it wasn't local to my school. It was, I don't know, man, it's just really, really mind-bending thing for, an 8-9-year-old at the time.
Yeah,
no,
sure.
When you're that age, it's rough to grasp it. Fortunately for me and Andretti, we were a little bit older. So a lot of what we had.
And we also walked there every day. We just, it was just a short walk for you and I to get there every day. He was driving every
walked
day.
there, lived there, spent the nights there.
Yeah.
So for people who never had anything like that, the easiest thing I could equate it to, if you ever saw The Sandlot, when all the kids go to the pool to hang out, or the scene in Caddyshack when everybody goes to the country club and they're at the pool.
Sure.
Something similar along those lines is really what it was.
That Sandlot resonates with me big time, especially because the last summers I remember there, I was 9-10 years old. So that's a really, really good one there, Groz.
Yeah. So the pool itself, so Liberty Park is probably about 8.5 miles from downtown Johnstown. So it's a little bit outside of town. It opened prior to at least 1940, because my grandmother and her friends and her siblings were walking there every day from Fifficktown, which is even farther away than South Fork. As accurate as I could find it, really on a Google map, it looks like it's about 2.8 miles each way. So to walk 2.8 miles each way in the morning, I mean, that's a long time that you're walking on a pretty dangerous road to get from Fifficktown to Liberty Park. I mean, it's just crazy. It's just how times changed, how far away they came from to walk that far just to get to the pole.
Well, and even back then, you got to remember they probably had sock hops and a lot of stuff. Remember they used to have those dances and stuff.
Yeah.
So I imagine back in those days, that was the place to be. You think about like Happy Days or something, along those lines. The kids wanted to have somewhere to hang out.
Yeah.
You got a central pool, you had a dance hall, you had a concession stand, whatever else they may have had at that time. I mean, that's definitely a place to meet. And as you alluded to, if you want to meet girls or boys from the other schools or your own school or whatever, you don't have a driver's license. Back then, not everybody had cars, so you hoofed it to go hang out.
My mom seemed to think that they were having the dances every Wednesday in the summer. So my Aunt Carol said, when I talked to her earlier today, that she doesn't remember going to any of the dances, and they had stopped doing that by the time she was old enough to go down there. But she remembered being young and hearing the music from down there. So I don't know what year they stopped doing that, but I think my mom used to go down there, and I'm not sure if my grandmother ever did. Walked all the way up there for the dances, but my mom thinks they had them every Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the pool. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is that what I like, a fond memory of mine that once you had mentioned that we were going to be doing this episode was that for several years, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old birthdays, the thing that I did was I went to Liberty Park. And the best part about it was every year my parents or whatever would call into Power 92. And so they would play the Beatles, They Say It's Your Birthday. And they would do it at like whatever, 8 o'clock and then 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock. And I'm thinking 10 o'clock is sticking with me as being one of the times that they would do the announcements for the birthdays. And there's several years of my childhood that I can remember going there and hearing my name on the speaker of them playing Power 92 while
that's great.
While they were there, and it would be my birthday day and me feeling like I was the king of the world or whatever.
That's awesome. Speaking of that, we could have made a whole list too of songs that we remember, that we remember hearing at the poll. I mean, that's the first time I ever heard Faith No More. When Epic was a single, and they're one of my favorite bands ever. Probably ever since then. So it's pretty crazy how that stuff just how you just you get that impression of something, that early in your life.
Well, speaking of impression, do you remember some of the Power 92?
Really quick, Roz, that birthday song, because of that, my kid's birthday every year, I play that Beatles song because of that, because Power 92 would play that Beatles song and then go through birthdays. So go ahead, Roz.
That's great.
No, I was just saying, I don't know if you remember Andretti, but a couple of times that those Power 92 guys and girls were there.
Oh, I forgot about that.
They were straight up pricks, though.
Yeah, they weren't very friendly when they would come around. That was they weren't very friendly.
Because people would be like, you're a pseudo celebrity, right? You're on the radio. People hear you, wherever. And I just remember a couple of the interactions. They were really just pricks, to put it politely.
Well, you weren't a pseudo celebrity. If you were a Power 92 DJ, everybody knew you. Like everybody listened to Power 92, and the people that didn't want to listen to Power 92 still know who they were because their kids listened to Power 92.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's what's pretty wild about
that. In fairness to those guys, they had a lot of snot-nosed kids walking up to them every day saying, play this song, play that song, play this song, play that song. So I'm sure they got their ass whipped pretty frequently by everybody down the pole whenever we were all down. And I'm sure I'm just as much to blame for that as everyone else is.
All the kids calling into dedication night, wanting to make a request and dedication to their loved one.
Yeah, I remember that too, man. But that, the thing that my mom reminded me of too was just how cold that water was, especially in the morning, because
it's spring fed.
It was spring fed. It's spring water. Yeah.
So I mean, I know that firsthand because the house I grew up in, if you remember, it was spring fed, water to the house. And if you remember down the back road there, it looked like the Goonies. I remember down over the hillside there where you open up the door and you saw the old abandoned mine tunnel.
Dude, I was scared to death to go in that thing outside of your house. I was always scared to go in there.
And, and it didn't matter any time of year. It could be midsummer and 100 degrees. It didn't matter. You turned on our cold water. It was crisp, chill, 45 degrees, 50 degrees, ice cold water. I mean, off the tap. So that big spring, up above it, coming down off 53 there, that whole hillside is nothing but a spring.
Yeah. Yeah, the water was cold, man. Yeah. My mom said that she remembered being really young and taking swim lessons down there and not even wanting to go because that water was so damn cold first thing in the morning.
Well, if you remember, we would always go Memorial Day weekend when it opened. Whether it was us, with the Von Erichs, maybe not, maybe some of the Von Erichs, maybe the little kid from the trailer park.
Yes.
Willie.
We'll call him Willie.
Willie? Okay, Willie. I was trying to think of a name. I couldn't come up with one. So we'll call him Willie. And anyway, we would all jump in. And I remember the one year we jumped in and it was 58 degrees.
Oh man.
But we just wanted to jump in to say, hey, we jumped in on the first day.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, look, let's do. I want to do a little fun thing here before we jump into the stories. I know everybody wants to hear the crazy stories, but I wanted to talk about this. We can't talk about Liberty Park without immediately mentioning the arcade room, right? There was no wiggle room here. You had to show up every day with quarters. I remember being a kid, stealing change out of my mom's purse, stealing money out of my dad's Pepsi cup, because my dad would come home with change every week, from work. But it was just a necessity, man. You could never go down there without having quarters to play the arcades.
You needed quarters, and you needed $2 for 2 slices of pizza.
Yeah.
So here was the thing with me is and if my memory is incorrect, then forgive me, but I am fairly certain that Papa Mongoose, the company that he had worked for, had arcade games there. And so I hope that this is not a created memory, and I will have to verify with the old man when I see him this summer. But it's stuck in my brain, because there were many places where I was able to do this, was that when Papa Mongoose would go in there to cash out the machines, he could open the box and just give me 100 credits on a game. And so there is a location that in my mind is Liberty Park, where they had Punch Out, correct?
Yes.
Because in my brain, I was playing, I fought bear huggers 700 times, and I was 7 years old, so I couldn't beat him. Do you know what I mean? Because I just couldn't get around the ooh. And so I don't know, man, but that's something that really stuck out to me was being able to be there. And now this wouldn't happen during hours. This would always be either before or after park hours. But so typically it would be before, because obviously after hours would be God only knows how late. And so, yeah, I in the the hazy sort of 6-year-old mind of mine, I'm in there playing Super Punch Out for free for a while. And I'll tell you what, man, perks of being an amusement game son. Not only did we have that, but at one point in time in my life, we had the Monday Night Football pinball machine in the garage where we could play that. We had the Playboy pinball machine, which sounds, oh my gosh, up front. But look, man, it was a very, very, especially compared to now, it was pretty PG-13. And to be like 10 years old is pretty risque. Do you know what I mean? So those things were all awesome. But yeah, man, that arcade was legit, too legit to quit.
And I don't know if Andretti wants to jump to it or not. I know he had it in his notes, but you brought up about playing games for free.
Yeah, say it.
No. Well, I'll let you. This is your podcast.
Look, you got into more trouble with this than I did, so
I didn't get in any trouble. Willie got in trouble. Remember?
Okay, so basically, you bringing it up about playing the free games. At one point, there was a CoinGate conspiracy that was going on at Liberty Park.
I was trying to think what game it was. I
can't remember. I know. I think at one point it was Time Soldiers, right?
It was either Time Soldiers or Mercs, because that's the two I came up with. Because for your list of top ones, and I couldn't remember it was the Time Soldiers or the Mercs game that they left it open. And
so the guy who came to take the money accidentally left the door open for the coin slot. So everybody in there.
What if it was my dad?
It could have been. Who knows?
Like I'm
But we played. I mean, all of us played thousands of free games that day, and it just playing that one particular game over and over and over and over again. And we had the owner's wife was on a freaking warpath, dude, and she was so pissed off at us over everybody playing those free games. But I thought you were one of the ones that got nailed for that.
No, well, no. If you remember, what happened was we were going to go to the drive-ins. Remember, we were walking down, going through Darwin's yard. And not the owner of Darwin's gym, just to clarify. And if you remember, that's when Willie's mom yelled at the top of her lungs, "Hey, get over!" and pretty much went bananas on it. Yeah, Mama Grizzly went nuts. And
she wasn't having that.
They reprimanded us and saying, how could we take money away from, the park owner and this and that? I was like, I was 16 at the time, whatever, 15, whatever it may be.
I think we were younger than that.
14, 15, like, what do you think I'm going to do? It's a free video game. But yeah, that was the reaction that Willie got, and Mama Grizzly definitely led into him on that.
So I asked you guys to come up with a kind of like a top 5 arcade. And if you don't have 5, that's okay. But we can just go back and forth here. So my number 5 was going to be Pole Position. And the reason why I said Pole Position was because I believe that was the first arcade I've ever played at Liberty Park. And it might be the first arcade game I've ever played.
Yeah, that was definitely a good one.
Did you, Gross, did you have a list of arcades you remember from playing down there?
I remember, if you remember that one awesome pinball one, it was the Black Knight.
Oh yeah, Black Knight was great.
The one that the big guy,
Aaron,
yeah, Aaron would play all the time, and then we would play it. But yeah, that I wanted to say, was it the Takan fighting game or that one console where you could fight all the different guys?
So I had on my list, I put Neo Geo Samurai Showdown on my list.
Yeah, that's what it was. The Neo Geo, yeah.
Yeah. Mongoose, do you remember any of the ones you played down there, Mongoose?
I knew Punch-Out. Aside from Punch-Out, the only thing that I knew that I would have played would have been pinballs, and that is because I played pinball games since I was 3 years old. Only because, especially being a son of an amusement man at that point in time, it was something that even if I wasn't any good at it, that I could play and feel like I was doing something. And so that's all I have is Punch-Out was, and to be able to get that verified was good because I know that I was in the Punch-Out game, but as far as the other games, pinball broadly, I can't remember a specific one. I actually have Carrie. Excuse me, I guess Carrie's the wrong thing to call. We'll call him Jeffrey Von Erich on the line right now. I'm trying to get his top arcade games really quick. So you guys talk. I'm gonna see if I can get them from him really fast.
So Jeffy Von Erich, who we also affectionately refer to as Slovak Ibushi on the podcast. So I haven't talked to Slovak Ibushi in a minute. I talk to Danny pretty often, but I haven't talked to Slovak Ibushi in a minute. But speaking of pinball, the one I wrote down that I really remember was the pinball game with the sexy robot. I mean, Gross, do you remember the name of that one?
No, I don't, but I know what you're talking about.
Because everybody wanted to play that game too, and I can't remember what the hell the name of that was.
Well, that could, because they had two or three pinball games. Plus,
yeah,
they were down there, and then eventually, remember, Mortal Kombat was down there.
Yeah.
Who really didn't like the Mortal Kombat? Did they
have Primal Rage?
Probably
because if they had Primal Rage, then Primal Rage would be up there. Because man, did I love Primal Rage, dude. And I can't remember if Liberty was one of the places I played at or not. But of course, I was a Mortal Kombat guy as well. But dude, Primal Rage, when you had that like red ape, that Velociraptor, what a game. Yeah. What a game. Yeah.
I also, I had a couple of honorable mention ones written down too. Do you remember playing the Excite Bike arcade game?
Oh yeah, the arcade game. I mean, I love the Nintendo version, but yeah, the arcade game was great.
I wrote down too about the sit down. I know you mentioned Goonies earlier. The sit down Goonies game was pretty fun. Like, do you remember like when we used to have to go to like Pizza Hut and places like that where they had like the Mario game where you actually had to sit down, or like the Pac-Man where you sat down and played it?
Yeah,
there was a Goonies. There was a Goonies game like that at Liberty Park for a minute.
I think I was going to say Golden Axe, but I think we ended up playing that like at Timeout or something all the time. Because I don't think Liberty got Golden Axe, or did they?
The other, yeah, I remember. Maybe they did get Golden Axe, man. It's like I feel like I played that a lot too. But the other on the number 2 one I remember definitely playing all the time was Operation Wolf.
Oh yeah, I'll put sitting there with the gun. Yeah, that's a good call. That's a great call actually.
And then for my number one that I remember, I don't know if you're going to remember this or not, because this was right when I first started going down there. They had an arcade game called Gladiator, and the premise of that was you would go and fight like one guy at a time, like a side scroller. But when you would hit them, you would knock off a piece of their armor every time you would strike them, and you had to get them basically naked before you could kill the guy. Do you remember playing that game?
I don't. I don't remember that one.
So I actually went back and found that game on YouTube, people talking about it on YouTube. And I found an emulator and I played it a couple years ago. It's not very good. It's not a very good game. But it's just one of those games. Like that was like one of the first games I remember ever spending a lot of money on down there. And that arcade game was hard as hell.
But those games were, I mean, it just worked out perfect. You know, you'd go down with maybe $1 or $2 in quarters. Like I said, $5. You know, you got your quarters. You get your slices of pizza. Maybe get a candy bar and a pop or something, and you were set. And we did that. 3 months. Well, we'll say 2.5 months of the year, every day.
Yeah, for sure.
Day and day. And it was especially awesome with the arcade. Remember when we had like the rain delays?
Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot all about that too.
So when it would, thunderstorm and they'd pull everybody out of the pool, everybody would go over to the concession stand arcade and just hang out or, hit up the jukebox.
Yeah, the jukebox is something we haven't talked about either. But there was, like I said about the Faith No More thing. I know you and I were enormous Kiss fans at that point because of Tommy. Got us into all that. Yeah. Tommy basically got you and me into Motley Crue and Rat and Kiss and everybody else at that point. I mean, that's still the same stuff I listen to every day now, man. So it's just amazing how you get the rub from from Cousin Bobby or from your brother Tommy or from Grow or somebody, and we end up staying with us for the rest of our lives.
Well, what stays with me to this day, every time I hear old time rock and roll or Kokomo, I think of the park and I think of Martha.
Yeah, there's no doubt, dude. There's no doubt about that. Every time I hear Kokomo, I think about Martha, for sure.
Every time.
Every single time. Who also, around that same time, being in like the mid to late 80s and everything is when I was, I was over at the neighbor's house every day, over at Pat in the neighbor on the other side. I was over there almost every single day bugging him to play Nintendo and everything. And we would just, I mean, I was way younger than those guys, man. I was like the youngest kid in the neighborhood at that point. That was before you and I even met, where all those guys they were in high school whenever I was just the little tag along kid, the little Xbox, right. It was, I guess maybe the little Triple H that was running around with the big dogs. But those guys were really good about, letting me listen to music and hang out and stuff like that. And that's where I got into AC/DC and Aerosmith and everybody, man.
Well, all those guys, and that was the whole thing about the neighborhood. You go from, we mentioned Aaron, great guy. My brother, he didn't come to the pool, but he was there for us. Grow, Pat, Danny, Johnny, Kirby, Clint. Everybody was older, but they would all come social, and they didn't mind a younger crowd.
Right.
Right.
Speaking of Johnny, me and my Aunt Carol were talking about him a little bit earlier and his family, because when that flood came through, their house was right in the crosshairs, man.
Oh, yeah.
It is absolutely amazing that they didn't lose their house.
Yeah, they are right at the corner, and I do not know how.
I don't know how either, dude. I don't know how. That's crazy. But I wanted to say too, I wanted to jump in before we get too into the stories. I wanted to just cover one more thing here real quick. So I wanted to go.
I'm going to cut you. I'm going to cut you off really quick, Andretti. I'm going to T-bone you here. Side swipe. Jeffrey Von Erich, favorite game, number one with a bullet, off road.
Okay.
And also wanted to say out loud that he sucked at pinball, especially compared to you guys. So, it's, when we're talking about the older crowd that cousin Jeffrey Von Erich he was a pinball watcher, not a pinball wizard. But he loved the off-road. And so I had to put that over really fast because I said, yo, I'm on a pod really quick talking about this. He said, this is my jam. He actually told me that this is my shit, Clay Davis style from The Wire. And so I had to put that over fast.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you reached out to him and he gave you that fast. It's great. Very cool. But yeah, I wanted to cover the other ground I wanted to cover so that I know we don't miss it. And Graz, I know you probably have strong feelings about this one, but top 3 lifeguards of our lifetime. Now, we got to mention the lifeguards, man, because there's just, it's such a big part of being down there and being a kid at that age and everything. But do you have a top 3?
You forgot Doug.
Okay, I did forget Doug. You're right.
I mean, he could be
really quick, Roz. Did Doug do swimming lessons?
Yes.
Doug taught me how to swim. Doug's my number 1 with a bullet, and I don't even need another 2. Doug taught me how to swim, bro. I bought a swimming cap there because of Doug.
A swimming cap.
Yeah, yes. So thank you for that, Groz. Doug's that's my whole list. Doug, and Doug. Thank you for that.
Wow.
I'd have to go with Doug. Honorary, I got to throw myself out there because I was always an honorary lifeguard, and Dutt has a couple stories along that line.
I do.
But I would probably say, really any of them are cool. The one story here I do got to tell you was Dutt had young Andretti back in the day, sort of like this one lifeguard. So he jumped in the pool the one time, faked a cramp, and this poor girl had to jump into the freezing cold water and pull his ass out. And yeah. I do believe her name was Michelle.
I have no idea what that girl's name was, but I think that was the first time in my whole life I realized that girls are awesome.
Yeah. And then my other 2 would be Bridget and Nicole from Westmont, just because they were from Westmont, and the whole, back then and even now, I don't know, Westmont, Forest Hills, we were the farmers, they were the Beverly Hills people, right? They
were the ginger from Gilligan's Island.
Yeah,
they were the movie stars.
and the one especially because I remember I had a severely sprained ankle, and I'd walk down the pool on my crutches, and then I'd get Bridget, who had just turned 16 and was driving a Cadillac, to drive me home.
That's great.
And then later on, I found out, you'll like this one, Mongoose. She dated Justin Burlew.
Yeah, Burlew. I think we were going to talk about Burlew on an upcoming show too, because I wanted to do I want to do kind of like a piece on famous athletes that Forest Hills football encountered over the years. And I know I wrote Burlew's name down for that show coming up. So we'll definitely talk about him whenever that comes up too.
Wow. Well, of course. And then later in the life when, I was selling TVs for tattoos and everything, back in the day, I got to become real good friends with Burlew. So.
Yeah. The other than Michelle, I think you're probably right about that being her name. The other one, my number 2 that I put down was, I'm just going to say his last name because everybody knows him as Sarka. I mean, Sarka was awesome, dude. I haven't seen that guy in so long, but the number one thing I remember about him is he went on that camping trip and got bit by a spider, and it was insane.
Brown recluse, and they had to cut off half his calf.
It's crazy, man. That's crazy about that. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, side story on him. When he got his driver's license, he got the pickle mobile. So it was like it was the color of a pickle, whatever shade of green you want to call that. I couldn't remember what kind of car it was, maybe a Toyota or something like that. That was the first car that we went cruising on Skelpin.
That's awesome,
me,
dude.
him, the Turgeon boys, and I think my buddy Ponchak.
Unbelievable. Ponchak. I haven't thought about Ponchak in 100 years.
Yeah. So I really, I remember doing that all the time, and we would just, get out and hang out. He was always a real cool guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. But then my, the only other one I wrote down was, and I know it's a controversial pick, his favorite lifeguard. I put Pat, not the neighbor Pat, not Pat the neighbor. This is I know who Pat. You mean.
he was a cool dude. He was definitely pretty cool.
Yeah. I didn't have too many interactions with that guy, but he was always kind of like the cool guy. You know, he was like the cool lifeguard.
Yeah.
I'm just dead to rights that Graz dropped Doug, because I wanted to say the guy that gave me swim lessons. And once he said that, boom, like that was absolutely perfect, man. Because I was too young to even know anybody's name, but I did know my swim instructor's name. I have two questions for you guys really quick. The first one is that Jeffrey Von Erich texted me a picture of a big manual boxing game that he said he thinks was called Heavyweight Championship Boxing.
It was there.
Do you guys have recollection? He said it was the hardest game ever.
I think it might have been Punch-Out.
See, because the Punch-Out that I remember was the one with the buttons.
Well, the first one that they had, that when you walked in the arcade, it was on the left. It was the second to last game on the left, towards the back corner. Was the Mike Tyson, was the Punch-Out game that had the two big handles you had to use.
That is literally what he showed. He just sent a picture of. That was
the first one they had. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I'm looking at this right here, and it looks like the Sandman is a big picture. It could be Mike Tyson, or it could be the Sandman.
Definitely Sandman is in that. But I couldn't even get past Glass Joe in that game, dude. That game was hard as hell.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. Yeah. So then maybe, the punch out memory that I had, I definitely remember having Bear Hugger in there. And so I certainly do not remember actually playing the things. So if those buttons weren't in there, then, I would have misplaced my memory. But something else that I needed to say is that I have a friend, Johnny Utah, that had chimed in, and he said potato pancakes and watermelon taffy with seeds were the two things that stuck out to him the most. Brother, I didn't know that they served anything at that place that wasn't Fun Dip or pizza.
Yeah.
And so my mind was completely blown. I literally texted him to say, are you sure that potato pancakes were a thing? And he said, I literally used to order 10 every day.
Yeah.
I don't remember the potato but I don't remember that at all. I remember I remember the pizza. I used to eat the pizza constantly. And I thought the hot dogs were pretty good too, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, the hot dogs were good. Well, I'm surprised you didn't bring up the pizza was made in somebody's house.
Oh my God.
2 miles up the road.
Celeste, right?
I mean that's a steak.
That pizza, man. So here's the thing about that pizza. All right. Are you guys familiar with the myth of Osiris and Isis from Egyptian lore?
Let's hear it. Let's just hear it.
Okay. So Osiris is he's the god king, and Isis is his wife. And Osiris's brother Seth, he's very envious of Osiris and his power. And so he kills Osiris and he chops him into 14 pieces. Okay. And he hides his body all over Egypt. And Isis and her sister are able to recover 13 pieces. And the only piece that they are unable to recover is the phallus. And so they construct a phallus out of gold. This gold phallus is then used to born Horus, who then Horus is the son of which, the son of those two. And then Horus goes on to be, the next god king himself, et cetera, et cetera. That Liberty Park pizza to me is literally like I don't mean to say it in this way, but it is the missing piece of Osiris, because I never have ever been able to find something so incredible at such a low price ever again. Like you guys said, cardboard pizza and stuff, and in the most endearing way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it is it is literally like this mythological thing. It is the modern day, what do you call it? Like the Ark of the Covenant. You know what I mean? Where is this recipe? And Jim, knock that. Graz, you say that it was made in somebody's house. Where is this person, and why aren't they just dealing pizza out of the backyard?
They might still be selling it for all I know.
Well, you guys went to school with them.
Yeah, we did. With right up the street, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they literally had the plant right there in the house, and she was selling that pizza all over the place.
I think there's a boy and 2 girls, right?
I think so. Yeah, I played basketball with the boy. Good dude. He was a good dude.
Well, years ago when I was still back home in the J-Town, doing the bouncing gig at the Shooters, I ran into the son, and we reminisced a bunch. So
Clint, right?
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. Yeah, great stuff, man.
I mean, it truly was. It was phenomenal. It was nothing fancy, but damn, did it taste good.
Yeah, one of the
out of this world, brother.
Yeah. One of the stories I had was the time that Martha put the sign up that said free pizza $1. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting. But some of the other stuff that happened down there too. I know we're not going to get really into the Leo stories because there's so many Leo stories, and that literally is its own episode. I'll have him on here at some point. And we'll definitely talk about that. But he's got so many crazy stories, man, that he's got to have his own episode.
That's a season's worth.
Yeah.
You could do 8 episodes.
Yeah, pretty much. Do you remember? Just off the top of my head here, do you remember that time? We don't need to name any names. That guy from Portage jumped over the fence. Or wait, no. One of the our neighbor jumped over the fence.
Jumped over the fence and cold cocked a dude in the side of the head
because he was starting to shit with his brother, right?
Yep, exactly.
I was talking to Aunt Carol about that a little bit. Like there really haven't been too many instances when we were growing up down there where there were fights.
No. For the amount of people and the different people you would get from the different schools and different areas, there really weren't many fights.
Yeah, pretty incredible to think about that.
I have a famous one that comes from from the side group of Johnny Utah and Jeffrey Von Erich, where Jeffrey Von Erich, and look, man, this is a different time, different age, but Jeffrey Von Erich got double back raked by a young lady and turned around and gave her the old Rick James, what did the 5 fingers say to the face? Slapped.
God.
And the rationale is don't double back rake somebody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you give somebody a double back rake and you're gonna catch 5 fingers. And so apparently poor girl cried. But look, man, lessons were learned and we all moved on.
I mean, I don't remember the back rake, but I remember the Von Erichs just beating each other to death with towels every day, dude.
Well, yeah. That I was gonna say the Von Erichs, and then remember the Von Erich, power bomb episode by Roz truly and Bobby doing the body slam.
That was a rough day to be a Von Erich at the pool. Those guys, I mean, just them throwing towels in the water as pranks, and then getting the towels out and slapping each other with wet towels, and just everybody just beating the crap out of each other. That was just insanity.
Well, and then throwing my Pepsi hat in the pool. You don't touch the Pepsi hat.
You still have the Pepsi hat?
No, I don't have the Pepsi hat.
What happened to the Pepsi hat?
Was that Pepsi?
I'm sure that thing
probably. Did you get that from Pepsi Points?
No, so when I was 13, I played junior league, and we were sponsored by Pepsi.
Okay.
So that's what
I was going to say. If that was one of those Pepsi Points hats, oh my gosh, I would take that on my head today. I don't need your junior league hat. You can have your memories, but if it was going to be from Pepsi Points, that'd been a whole nother ball game.
Dude, you wore that Pepsi hat. I can still see you hauling those stacked chairs all over that damn pool every morning and every night wearing that Pepsi hat, dude.
Those chairs. The greatest part about that, though, was it taught you for a little bit of hard work. Art and Martha basically swim anytime you want, or they would, give me free food or whatever, or pay me a couple bucks a week, all literally for hanging out. And then you sort of had the in, right? Because everybody's like, "Oh, you work here," right?
Yeah.
So everybody, you'd be like, "Oh, you're a celebrity. He works here." People would show up, know from school or whatever, like, "Oh, Jim works, or Cross works here."
Do you, speaking of cleaning up, do you remember the summers? Do you remember the summers leading up, or I guess it would probably be like May. Do you remember the Mays leading up to the pool opening and scraping that damn pool, dude?
Yep. I for years and years, I don't know how in the heck Art did that.
I don't know either.
I know for a while there, Doug and Larry, and segue on Larry actually lived out in Arizona for a while, if you remember.
Wow.
Because if you remember, he drove home and he had all those army men on his truck and they melted.
That's crazy. But I remember like, so the pool would sit, out in the open, during the winter months in Pennsylvania and all that. And it would get full of, debris and slime and everything else. So, I mean, you'd have to go down there and empty the pool before opening and scrape all that stuff out of there. I mean, we're talking about, how big do you think that pool was? 100 yards? Was it 100 yards? Probably more like 60, maybe 60 or 70.
Maybe bigger than that.
So we're talking about a pretty big sized pool that has to be scraped and repainted every May.
Yeah.
What's the standard size pool? Because it's certainly bigger than your standard pool at the Y.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think it was Olympic size, to be honest with you. Whatever that is.
I don't know.
I wouldn't say you were wrong there.
It was enormous.
They certainly had a nice, healthy, shallow end. I'll tell you what, man, that slide. Oh, brother, you got on that slide, and either sometimes that water was too cold, or that slide would just burn your skin off.
I remember that.
But yeah, that slide was something.
Somehow that slide survived the 77 flood.
I'm not surprised. That slide was probably made out of asbestos and cockroaches, because it would be the two things that would survive a nuclear holocaust. That slide's probably still up, man. They could have completely demoed that entire area, and I just imagine that slide would still be up.
That'd be awesome if it was.
Did you guys ever play Rundown in the yard with tennis balls?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something I was asked to put over by the homie Johnny Utah.
That's great.
Was playing Rundown on the sides. Also, and this was a side story, because you had mentioned about fights and things. I have never seen Yimis Von Erich mad, okay? But apparently Yimis Von Erich at one point in time, he allegedly, and the phraseology here isn't good, but they'd said almost drowned a kid because he put his ice cream cone on Clint's head. So Yimis dragged the kid from the pool into the pool and dragged him in from the outside. And it was the only time that the people on record had seen the Yimis mad. Yimis is a sweet dude, man.
I don't think I've ever seen the Yimis mad, but I remember one side story here. I haven't seen him in a long time. I actually talk to him every once in a while, but I haven't seen him in years. I think the last time I saw him was at the one of the casinos down in Allentown or Bethlehem, that big Harris. Me and Turbo were down there, and we had an awesome time down there. And he lived pretty close by, and he came up and hung out for the whole, for hours. We hung out at the casino, and then we had an awesome time. I think that was probably the last time I'd seen him in person. That probably was like I'm going to say that was like 2013, maybe somewhere around there. But yeah, I still talk to him pretty often, off and on.
That's awesome. I'm trying to find out right now do you guys know a definite close date of the pool?
That's what we got to figure out. So, Draws, do you have any idea when the pool shut down? Like when was that?
I want to say, let's see here. I graduated, 97? It was fairly close after that.
So do you think it was before 2000? I honestly don't know.
I want to say yes,
because if it was after 2000, I'd have went there, because I would have been at the prime age you guys were trying to holler at shorties and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because 97, I'm going to say 99, maybe 98 even.
Yeah. I know it was a shock. It was a shock to everybody. I know that.
Right, because Johnny Utah, who I reached out to see if he can give me information on that, he told me that in the closing years, he said that we, meaning like him and the Von Erichs, were the only people he knew with summer passes the last 2 years, other than two girls who will be nameless, William Grizzly and Leo.
Oh, God, that's funny.
And I died whenever Leo was the last name on there. So I'm trying to get a year out of him. But if I was going to guess, actually, there, Groz, my guess would have been 97. But maybe I'm wrong, but that would have been my guess, man.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been. It could have been the summer that I graduated, because it was there my senior year. I do remember that because I got senior pictures and stuff.
Okay. Well, it had to be between there and when before 2000, I would think, right? Because I remember it happening, but I kind of feel like I wasn't in town or something when that happened. So maybe that was like whenever we were off to college, for the first time or something like that.
Yeah, 97, 98 would be my bet, because I remember senior pictures would have been 96, right?
Yeah, for you.
Yeah, it would have been going into that year.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, I'd say 97, 98, because 97. Let me see here. I gotta think. How old is Austin? Is he 25?
He's got to be 25.
Because we used to take him down in the wagon. He was born.
So Johnny Utah chimed in, and he says 96 or 97.
Okay, that sounds about right. Right.
97 would make sense there, Groz. If you would have gotten senior picks and whatnot in 96, then that would make sense.
So that if that place opened in the 30s, which is what we kind of feel like it did, if it opened in the 30s, that's like 60 years, maybe even almost 70 years of families going to that pool, generations of families going to that pool, man. That's pretty wild to think about that.
Torn down in 2006.
Torn down? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So it sat vacant for a while. I know that. Crazy. But speaking of the Von Erichs, man, like just when it was always so interesting, because you'd be in the water or you'd be like in the pool, like sitting down or something, and then you would just look over and you would just see this gigantic van come rolling down the road, dude. And they would show up with just an army in this giant van. It was like when Hogan's music started playing, dude. And you knew that whatever was happening right now, the party was about to start. And whenever that van door opened, there was just an army of Von Erichs that would just come pouring out of that damn van, dude. And I'll never forget seeing that every day with them coming down to the pool.
It was like a damn clown car.
It was awesome.
That's so funny because I know that's so true.
It's freaking great, but we can't miss the story. So you said earlier, Groz, about you put yourself over. You went into business for yourself, and you put yourself over about being a lifeguard at the pool. So we got to tell the story about you saving a kid's life in the deep end. So do you want me to tell this, or do you want to tell it from your perspective?
You tell it. Because it's better if it's coming from you.
And you fill in the blank. So what happened was we're sitting in the stacked chairs right there on the fence, and there was a kid that I think wandered out onto the diving board that was clearly not old enough or good enough of a swimmer to be in the deep end of the pool. And I don't know if the kid jumped or if he fell off the diving board, but I know that you jumped out of that seat and basically did a one-hopper within about 15 feet and jumped over that wall, which I will never forget seeing, and pulled that damn kid out of that water before he drowned. And that was unbelievable.
Yeah, so what it was a little kid, probably toddler age, probably 3-4 years old. climbed up. Parents nowhere to be found. I don't even know where they might have been in the changing room, bathhouse, or just running around. And you just saw this little kid, and the whole time we were doing whatever, BS and talk or whatever. And I just remember seeing this little kid, and I'm like, thinking to myself, he's on a walk right off, and he literally did just walked right off the end of the diving board. And I went and did a like you said there, Andretti, jumped about 5 feet out over the wall, jumped in and saved the kid. So
crazy.
That
was what a hero you are, Gross. To jump in there. Hopefully that kid thanks you every day of his life. Now that he got to live a life because the Gross man pulled him out of the deep end.
Well, absolutely.
Here's the terrible thing about this. What if his parents were each in those bathrooms without the stall doors on them? just taking dumps for everybody to see their faces as they were trying to go. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Well, craziest part is, I just remember, I can't remember the woman's face, but I can just remember, her expression and stuff, and just how grateful she truly was. Just thanking me countless times over and over and over again. And, it's things like that you look back and like, you guys say, I did save a life. But pretty remarkable.
You did, dude. You saved that kid's life. And I don't know how you even saw the kid up there, because I know we were screwing around right there in the chairs and not paying attention to anything. I don't even know how the hell you saw the kid.
I don't know how the hell I jumped over that wall, which was easily, 3/4 as tall as I am.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to say this, Graz, but that's normally the way that those things go down, is you don't know how they happen. Because if you did, then you probably wouldn't have done it. And what I mean is that something would have gotten in the way. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was when I was maybe like 9 years old or 10 years old, and I was with Papa Mongoose at a Pirates game. And we had like second or third row seats right at first base. And I used to keep score. If you guys remember those days where you get the program where you can keep score along with the game. And I was keeping score, writing things down, and a foul ball got hit. And Papa Mongoose reached his hand out in front of my head and took a foul ball off the ball of his index finger. His hand swelled up literally like a baseball. It was purple, it was everything else. And the thing is it asked him about it after, like, what happened? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things, man, where if you think about it, then it's not going to happen. And so the fact that you were able to react and go, man, I don't know. It's one of those, I don't want to say out of body, but you get what I'm trying to say is you almost go into this like insane weirdo autopilot thing where if you can't go and react, then that isn't going to happen. So that's a pretty wild story.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. That's the time just slows down in those moments, man. I mean, I think
that's probably the best way to put that is time slows down. And that's how you're able to do things that, if we would have said, hey, Graz, do X, Y, and Z in this time frame again and again, he probably wouldn't be able to do it. And then, you got your 1 in 1,000 and boom.
Yep. Well, congrats on that, man. I mean, going from the heroism to, one of the weirdest experiences of my life. I mean, one of the craziest things I've ever had happen to me on Liberty Park Road. I mean, walking down to the pole. I mean, I think I was walking actually back from the pole, and this old car, an old silver car, was coming towards me, and the road is not wide. It's basically like a 1.5 lane road, Liberty Park Road. So I remember going over towards Blau's house right there before you turn down into the trailer park. I walked over on that side of the road to let the car pass, and it was probably like, I don't know, 10:30 in the morning, somewhere around there, or 11 o'clock in the morning. And the dude stepped on the brakes and parked his car and got out. And when you're a kid and that happens to you on a street, you're probably not thinking this is going to end well, right? The guy motioned me over, and for some reason I went to his car. He was already out of the car. Older guy. He's probably 75 years old. The guy pulled a nickel out of his pocket and handed it to me and said, "Do you know what that is?" And I of course I said, yeah, it's a nickel. And he said, I want you to repeat after me. And I'm like, okay. And he said, I want you to say to me, give me liberty or give me death. And I said, okay. So I did. And then the guy gave me the nickel, and I think he saluted me like an army soldier. And then he drove away, and I never saw that guy again. And that was freaking insane.
Could have been a war nickel.
I have no idea, but that was probably the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me down there. I've got a crazier story than that involves the poll that we can get into here later. But that was just bizarre for sure. So what else you got, Garage? You got any other stories you want to put over here before we move on?
Well, which stories? Do you just want crazy stories?
Well, let's see here. What else do we got? Let's get into the weird stuff here real quick. Let's get into the let's see where we're at here. Some of this stuff I think we're going to skip because I think we're going to save it for another time. But let's see if we've got. Let's get into the weird stories about Liberty Park. So I know you and I have got some really weird stories that we want to talk about here. Some things that have happened in the local area, like within the walking distance of the local area. And look, man, all that said, I mean, there's a side to Liberty Park that we have to cover, and that's some of the more odd, maybe even supernatural stories that we've kind of experienced over the course of time. But I think the first one, and you'll probably agree with this, the first one that we ever really encountered and heard about was just the fact that there were all those rumors about there being Satan colonies in the woods. Do you remember hearing about that when we were growing up?
Yeah, up Waterdam, the old abandoned. I don't even know what you would call those, cabins or some sort of building.
So this would have been right basically at the base of where the dam broke that flooded everybody in 77.
So,
fast.
Let me jump in really fast because I'm going to let you guys expound upon, because you were older and were able to live this more. But as a 11, 12-ish year old kid that did a whole bunch of bike riding from what would essentially be the Elton area down to like Salix in those woods, I encountered more than one like brickish, cabinish building that had pentagrams and all kinds of crazy shit painted all over it. And I tell you what, man, that freaked every little bit of me out. And I didn't even know a story about it. And so the fact that this was on the show notes gave me the heebie-jeebies. Because I would love to chalk all this stuff up to satanic panic, right? But like I very, very, very strongly remembered driving past some of these old abandoned places, buildings, cabins, whatnot, and seeing things that even my unindoctorated, I'm not too sure what this is. I saw the mark of the beast painted in spray paint more than one time. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about this.
I mean, I don't really have too much more to add to it other than the fact that we always heard about those cabins, and we even when we were getting into our teenage years, we were still scared to go up there.
Oh yeah, because we would go fishing all the time and walking down through those woods down to the old dam and stuff. You walk past them and you just got a creepy feeling because there'd be, once in a while you might find some old clothing or what appeared to be maybe bloodstains and stuff.
Dude, who the hell was up there leaving clothes up there?
Well, you got to remember, some of the older crew at that time, your neighbors, or I guess I can probably say them because nobody's on the Blouse. I don't, that there was three brothers that were pretty notorious for doing some, in and out of trouble, throughout their life. So I think there might have just been a set of characters that might have just partook in some of that stuff,
Yeah,
because if you remember, back in those days, if you remember, that's really when Ouija was big. The Ouija board and everything else. because, we didn't have social media. You had Nintendo and stuff, but really, kids were finding stuff to do, or, this and so I think that's probably what it really was. But yeah, I mean, still, they still definitely get the heebie-jeebies for sure. Even talking about it.
I don't think I ever went up to those places until I was with Leo, and that was probably when I was like 18 years old. I bet. Crazy. That's crazy. We were afraid to go up there to those cabins, even whenever we were a lot older.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, those things, and out through, if you know the area that I'm talking about, which would have been the wooded area that would have connected behind where my parents' house was, the entire way through St. Michael, like that entire area of paths and bike paths and things like that. Weird stuff, brothers. And there was more than one of them, and they were all uninhabited, and it was a bunch of stuff that was over my head then, and just seeing that on there now, I completely forgot about it until you had said that.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of going up towards where you grew up, and through those woods, I mean, there was always the stories up toward, about halfway between where Draws grew up and where you grew up, about the Black Hand, when during the Prohibition era, and there being local local mobsters that had moonshine stills and things like that back in the woods. And I remember hearing stories about money being hidden in the woods when we were growing up, and about them going and beating people up and things like that. I mean, Draws, do you remember hearing about any of that stuff?
Well, my dad still to this day swears there's money buried back. You remember where we used to have that old cow barn way in the backyard there?
Yeah.
So once you come up the back road, remember how we used to have that path that cut up through the woods where we'd go sleep out and stuff?
Sure.
Yeah, there used to be an old cow barn back there, and he to this day he still swears, somewhere in that area there was money and stuff buried in the ground from the moonshining days.
Didn't you and your sisters or somebody find like a glass jar full of coins one time somewhere?
They found a jar of mixed coins back there in that area.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing about that even from my grandmother would tell me not to go back there in the woods because there were bad people that were back there. I mean, that was even in the 80s. She would tell me those stories. It's crazy. Yeah, but the other, going on the other side of town, back behind my house down towards South Fork, and those real thick woods down there. I mean, I remember hearing a story from the local people growing up about that guy freezing to death in the barn up in the woods. I mean, and you and I in particular, I mean, I know you and I have been up there a number of times in the woods behind Steinman's, where Steinman's Ribbon and Trophy, where there were foundations up there way on top of the hill, and there was an old house and an old barn and things like that. And hearing those stories about that guy that froze to death, I believe that was a true story.
Oh no, I believe it. In a segue from Steinman's, Mongoose, you remember that time that somebody convinced us, hey, let's go for a hike, and then 6 miles later we're down on the backside of Physic-Town, and we had to call to get a ride.
We walked right through there, right past those ruins of that barn. We walked right past it.
That's when they were logging and stuff, and somebody got the bright idea. Oh yeah, let's go for a hike. It won't be long. And pretty much the whole day later, we're like, yeah, we're not fucking walking back.
Yeah, that was. I think we made a pact to go get milkshakes after that, if I'm not mistaken. we all went to McDonald's or something to get milkshakes.
I think you're absolutely right about that. Yeah, man. Yeah, that turned into a very long endeavor.
Yeah. Another story about that back there too, in those woods, was the old cemetery. Like, so there is an old cemetery back there somewhere in those woods between Mount Hope and between Steinman's, heading even down into towards South Fork. There definitely is an old cemetery up there, because I remember when I was a kid, some of the parents in the neighborhood had mentioned about that, and I remember that some of them remembered being there, but we all went up there 1,000 times looking for that cemetery, man, and we never found it. But our the generation before us could remember that it was definitely there, but then nobody could remember exactly where it was. So who knows how many people are buried up there in tombstones that have just been completely overrun by nature at this point. Nobody will ever even know those people are buried up there.
Yeah, very, very true.
Yeah, that was wild. So I wanted to tell the story too. I wanted to give you, the opportunity here to tell the story about the time that it was like the craziest night probably of your life, when the house got broken into and you and Leo saw stuff on the road. You saw stuff up by Slagle's barn. Do you want to tell that story?
Well, the house got broken into. That was when my two younger sisters were home alone.
Yeah.
And I think we were either a ball game, either my ball game, my brother's ball game, some ball game or something. And I just remember they said, they heard somebody come in the house, so they went upstairs, locked themselves in their bedroom and barred the door the best they could, and heard somebody coming up the stairs. And just at that same point, I guess we were pulling in the driveway or whatever, and whoever or whatever was in the house bolted out and took down over the hillside going into the swamp, so not going down towards the park or anything else, went down over the far hill that goes down into the swamp. So that was definitely pretty freaky. And then the ghost on Slagle's barn, that's a secondhand story from my brother and Leo. But when they told it to this day, when their faces were that white, that's a legit, apparition or whatever you want to call it.
I thought that when they saw that up by the barn, that was whenever Tommy and Leo went looking for the people that broke into the house.
No, that was at a different point. It sort of was, because they were going to camp out or hide out to see if, because, we live in a very rural area. So people would, come in and rummage through stuff or, try to take stuff. So they would sit out at night and stuff. But that was on one night when they saw that one up there. But the crazy one was the one of the guy riding the bike up the hill.
Yeah.
The glowing figure that rode the bike, that they said they were sitting there. And now, don't get me wrong, the bottom half of Water Dam is fairly easy to pedal. But as you get up to the upper half where it starts to incline, they just remember hearing the squeaking, and whatever this person, apparition, whatever it might have been, was just squeaking and pedaling up that hill like nothing. And they put their tails between their legs and ran home.
I remember Leo freaking out because he said that person had their head down, and whenever they looked up at him and Tommy, there was no face.
Yep. And even now, telling that story, I get goosebumps.
I mean, I just did too, man. I mean, that's
that Water Dam Hill, and then what's the one that's off Palestine Road that is like a straight up hill? You know what I'm talking about? Like it goes past like the trailer park. If you go down Palestine Road, Rock Dump Road.
Yeah.
Those are two hills that you need to be an Olympic cyclist to be able to climb with no problem. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's what's wild is to say that anybody's on a bicycle just driving up it. Like as conditioned as I ever could have been in the most bike riding days of my life as a child, I never would have been able to make it up one of those hills without stopping and walking up a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's wild. That's creepy.
It's very creepy.
Even walking up those hills is a task.
Yeah. So since we're talking about the ghost story, before we move on to the Bigfoot of UFO stuff or whatever, like I want to tell you, because I don't, Mongoose, you might not even know the story, but one time, this was probably like, I'm going to say it was probably like 94, 95. The neighbor, Otter's kid, who was somewhere around your age. He also had a younger brother that was just little, maybe like 3 or 4 at the time. And we were just shooting baskets at a little basketball hoop that he had kind of connected to the back of the house. And we were just hanging out and doing that. And a girl walked out of the woods behind us to the edge of the property where there's an old dirt road that used to be the main road that connected Mount Hope and South Fork, right? And that ran behind all of our property right at the tree line, right? And then, you know, when they put the new road in, of course, you know, in front of the property, everybody quit using the road in the back, obviously, right? So we're sitting there and we're just shooting around and everything, and this girl walks out of the woods, and she was wearing pretty normal looking clothes for the time. And she came out of the woods and she started walking down the back road towards Steinman, Ribbon, and Trophy, where the woods get really thick, right? Now it runs parallel to the main road, right? And what's in between is everybody's property, like my parents' property, and, you know, Otter's property and everybody else's property right down there, until you get all the way down to this really big patch of woods that separates the houses from Steinman's, Ribbon, and Trophy, right? But everything's on the same street, basically. So this girl walks down the back road, this back dirt road, and we both kind of, me and the neighbor boy, both kind of took notice of it. And then she just kind of walked into the woods, which is very strange behavior, right? For somebody that we had no idea who this person is. I mean, it's a very small community. You know everybody. There's not just random kids that are your age that just walk out of the woods and just disappear into the woods again, right? That's very out of the norm. So you know, we're standing there, and I told him, I was like, you know what, man, we should just go see what the hell is going on with that. So we started walking diagonally through everybody's property to get to the woods where she went into. And when we got basically to the tree line, we saw her sitting on a stump in the woods. And all of a sudden behind us, his littlest brother, who was probably about 3 or 4 at the time, came running up behind us, and we knew right away, like, we can't take him into the woods. He's too little, right? So begrudgingly, we took him back to the porch and put him on the porch and told him to stay there, which he surprisingly did. But then me and the older brother went back up there to see where the hell this girl went, right? So by the time we got back up there, she was gone. She wasn't there anymore. So we started yelling, you know, hey, you know, where are you? Stuff like that, to see where she was. And we're walking through the woods now, again, parallel to the main road. So we can hear traffic on the road, right? About probably like, I'm going to say maybe like 70 yards to our right is where the main road is, right? And we're parallel to that, going through the woods. And we're yelling, and she's yelling back, you know, hey, I'm down here, you know, over here, or stuff like that, which is bizarre, right? So we finally get to this patch, which is only about, maybe 30 yards off the road behind this old gate. And it was an open area. It was still wooded. It was still surrounded by woods, but it was this open area that was very wet, and it was kind of like swampy. And when we finally got to this girl, she had a backpack with her that was laying on the ground. It looked really out of place. It just looked out of place. And there were just hundreds of footprints everywhere in this little opening, this little like wet, swampy opening. There were hundreds of footprints for some reason. So, and we talked to her, and it was weird. It felt like she was just out of place or out of time or something, right? And I remember asking her, you know, where did you come from? And she said, my uncle lives, you know, up the street, right? And I remember asking this girl what her uncle's name was, and she said the name of the uncle, and I had no idea. I mean, you know, I lived there my whole life at that point. We knew everybody. I mean, that wasn't a name I was ever familiar with. And I said, which house is it? And she told me which house it was, which I knew the house. And I said, is it so-and-so? And she looked at me like she didn't know what I was talking about. And then she said, oh, I'm just waiting for my ride. And again, we're 25 yards off the road behind an old locked gate, basically, right? And it was just very bizarre. But she's like, no, I'm just waiting for my ride. I'm waiting for my ride. And me and the neighbor kid were like, okay. So we just walked straight to the gate. We climbed over that gate. I remember this very vividly. We climbed over the gate. We got onto the main road, and we started walking up the main road towards his house, right? And I'm telling you the truth when I say this, there was no cars that passed us either way while we were walking up that road, probably maybe a quarter of a mile from that gate to his house. Nobody passed us the whole way, and we were both freaked out. It was really freaky. So once we got about, I'd say probably 80% of the way to the house, he and I both said, basically came to the conclusion at the time, we were both like, you know what, this is not right. We need to go back down there and figure out what the hell is going on here, right? So we turn around, we walk back down the main road. Again, nobody passed us at all. Coming north or south on that road, nobody passed us. A 2-lane road, it's a regular route right there in Pennsylvania. So nobody passed us. We walk back down the road to that gate. I'm telling you this, it's insane. It's insane to think about this. We got back to that swampy area. There was nobody there. There was no backpack. The only footprints that were in that area were from mine and his when we walked out of the woods into that area and made a hard right turn to that gate. That's the only footprints that were still there, dude. And his face went very white. And I was so freaked out about that. That girl was 1,000% gone, dude. And that is a shoot real story that happened to us that I'm never going to forget that.
Dimension hopping. I have no other way to, and I don't mean to say it this way, but like seriously, if that is a lived thing that you went through, the only thing that I can rationalize is that, I don't know, that you guys went somewhere on some parallel timeline and came back. And as stupid as that might sound to people, how else do you explain anything like that?
I mean, dude, I'm freaked out again right now just thinking about this, because I'll never forget those details, because it's the truth. That's a true story, man. And I don't know what to say about that or what the hell happened.
When it comes to, I find it a lot easier to, a lot of things that we deal with in day-to-day life, that things that slap me in the face is that doesn't make sense. I like to say that doesn't make sense, and things that don't make sense that I can make sense of. I don't know, man. Like I don't know. I don't know if you crossed some gate. I don't know if you did something, but I don't have any other reason, because I'm obviously not going to call you a liar, especially for you to give me that kind of details that 20 years later, 30 years later, whatever that is. Holy cow.
Yeah. Groz, you want to get into some of the stuff you saw in the woods behind your house?
Yeah. So we'll go ahead. We'll dive into it here. So starting off, I want to say probably 9, maybe 10 years old. I remember me and one of my younger sisters, we had relatives in from Potter County up north, and they were in, my aunt, uncle, a bunch of my cousins. And I just remember we went over the hillside, goes on the swamp, and me and my sister went over to throw away some pork rinds and stuff, or not pork rinds, watermelon rinds. And when we did it, we both saw something in the woods. Didn't really think anything of it until later on, when my uncle and them were visiting. They were going through these books and stuff that they brought, kids' books, magazines, whatever it may have been. And we both pointed at a picture. And at the time, it was a picture of the infamous Bigfoot, right? And we both said, that's what we saw. And everybody, blew it off, thinking, yeah, nothing. Well, as the years go by, other sightings would be seen. Like somebody would see something, maybe walk across one of the windows in the front yard or the backyard, and most house windows, they're 8-10 feet off the ground, so in order to see a head or something come across at that point, it has to be something pretty big, unless somebody's on a pogo stick outside jumping. So these went on, sightings off and on here, where we would hear things in the woods, or during hunting season and stuff, you would see tree branches broken off 10-12 feet in the air, which just didn't make sense. I remember my brother and Leo had a tree swing they built down in the back road, where it overhung the one hill, the road, and then the other hill where you could swing out. And I remember down there one time, I was down there with Leo, and we were swinging. We heard just unbelievable screaming. That's something I never heard before in my life. But the biggest one was when, prior to this, When was Sven there? Was that 89?
Sven would have been there.
89, 90?
Yeah,
88,
right
90?
around there, I would think, right?
So we had a foreign exchange student.
So not it was. I think 90 would have been the football year because he left before they played the United game, right?
Yeah. So around that timeline, we had a foreign exchange student from Germany that lived up the road with our neighbors, and this was for my dad, my brother, and himself. They were pulling up into their road going up Water Dam to pull in up there. They lived up by Slagles, the same place as the infamous ghost sightings. And some creature ran out in front of them in the middle of the road. Sure as hell wasn't a bear. They didn't know what it was. They just sort of stood there and looked at it, and it looked back at them, and then just within a couple strides took off and was in the woods. And the German kid thought, is that a bear? Or, what? And my dad and brother just, they didn't have an answer.
Wow.
So fast forward a little bit longer. I was probably 13, 14, had a neighbor that moved up the road, Jesse. Great kid. A little goofy, but, overall great kid. And they moved in, and they also had similar sightings, same stories, this and that, about, seeing things, tree branches, finding, weird footprints and stuff like that. The one year we went hunting, and we're, you both know where I live, it's 15 acres where my dad's at, but then it just rolls through, through those, the farm fields and this and that. And we were on the far mountain, probably from my dad's house, probably 3 miles, into the woods. And we were just hiking, and like right now, even starting to tell you guys this, all the hair just raised up on my arms, on my back, and I got goosebumps. We were walking through this gully, and we came across this footprint, a set of footprints that we were just like, what was that? And then we started hearing stuff. We both loaded our guns and we bolted the hell out of there. And to this day, I will swear, people make fun of me, people don't believe me, but Bigfoot is real. There is something out there, walking around, humanoid, hairy creature, whatever you want to call it, that, it is out there, and it is real. I've seen enough evidence throughout my lifetime and other people, seeing sightings that there is definitely something, especially in that wooded area.
So I know that you've had neighbors that have made plaster casts of these feet, right?
Well, it was Jesse's relatives. They lived a little further up. So if you know where Water Dam's at, and then if you sort of know where Solomon Run's at,
yeah,
because that's all sort of connected, right? Woods wise, they lived a little bit closer up towards the airport there, and that's where they had their castings done.
Those woods are so thick and they're so dark all the time. That is a very spooky place to be, even in the daytime.
Dude, it's like, do you remember? On a side story, do you remember the time I had that birthday party?
I don't know. You have to refresh my memory here a little bit.
I think it was my 16th birthday party, and invited all the people to the house, and then convinced them to go on a walk down the back road. And I went and changed and came running down the woods.
Oh my God, I do
because
remember that.
You and Willie were there for sure. Because you guys knew what was coming, and everybody ran and was scared to shit and stuff. And I think somebody twisted their ankle and stuff.
Wow. What was the story about Tommy saw something in his gun scope?
Well, in that too, yeah. So that's what I mean. There's, everybody had some sort of encounter where, they just weren't sure what it was. As Mongoose alluded to, it's unexplained. I mean, we're recounting it firsthand, or secondhand from, somebody very reliable, Yeah, definitely crazy stuff.
So the crazy story that I had with that was the time that it was me and you. I believe Willie was there. We don't need to call anybody else out that was in the party that day, but we were in that field behind your house, and it was pretty far from your house, and it was very wet, and we were on the path in the field. There was like a path that went through the actual field itself that separated the fields, and we saw a footprint that was probably about, I'm going to say, 20 inches.
Yep.
And we all went white whenever we saw that damn thing, dude. Everybody in the party went white. It was plain as day, middle of the day. We saw this one, like, very, very clearly gigantic footprint that was just completely out of place. And we got the hell out of there immediately.
Or the time we all camped out with the Von Erichs. And we heard stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't there that night. I for whatever reason, I was not allowed to camp out with you guys that night. And you had a hell of a story from that night. Do you want to tell? Let's tell that one too, because that got pretty freaky.
Well, that was the one. So that was when Bobby Von Erich was coming up later. You know, he was on a park down on my back road and then walk up through the woods. And he tried to find us with a flashlight, but he just couldn't. So he ended up going home. And this was, at that point, I have no idea what time it is. It's just pitch black, right? And we were all there. It was me, Leo, and the Von Erichs. I think all the Von Erichs, honestly. And we were all there. You know, we built this fort in the woods where we, slept out, had tents or whatever. And at some point, we started seeing this light coming through the woods, and we thought it was Bobby. Well, then all of a sudden, the whole woods lit up, and the cow field lit up. And UFO, whatever it may have been, scared the living bejesus out of every single one of us.
You said it was some kind of like a green light, right?
Yeah, it was something that lit up everything, lit up the woods, lit up the field. I mean, definitely some spooky stuff, to say the least.
So you guys went up there earlier in the day or earlier in the week and built own wooden shacks to sleep in later that night.
Oh yeah, or even like a wall.
Some kind of wall, like lean-to or something.
Yeah, because there's bears and stuff up there, or deer. You don't want to get trampled by a deer or anything, running around through the night or the morning.
So who was in the lean-to that something jumped on top of?
I think that was one of the. I think Suka was there, if I recall, and I think it was. I can't remember which Von Erich. I just remember Bobby Von Erich was supposed to show up later. But
so during all this chaos, I remember you guys were freaking out big time because the field lit up, the woods lit up, and something jumped on top of the lean-to and was shaking it.
Well, and somebody took off. I think it was Leo and it might have been Jeffy. But because you remember that cliff that was up there?
Yeah.
The rock cliff formation?
Yeah.
They ran and they almost ran off of that.
Holy hell.
Look, man.
That was that.
When cryptids and things like this come out, Mothman, Dogman, these things, they're the reason that people in cities don't see these things is because cities have been completely stripped of their what do you call it? Like their inner beauty. Do you know what I'm saying? They've been stripped of their essence. You've cut down what nature is, and you've replaced it with concrete and smoke. And so anytime that I hear any of these things, by no means do I think anybody's even half kook. Because if anything anywhere is able to hop from one plane to another, you're not going to do it in the middle of a metropolis.
Right.
The reality of it is that if we got more than one person that sees this particular thing, or even if it's one person, who am I to call anybody a liar? And so especially if it's somebody that I trust, and these things, my gosh, this is fascinating.
I mean, it took us a little while to get into the crazy stories here on this episode, man. But I'm freaked out right now. I mean, just thinking about this stuff again. Oh man, I mean those are memories that just came up when we were talking, and Gruz, I completely forgot about you being a kid and seeing that picture of a Bigfoot and you and your sister being like, that's the thing that we saw in the woods. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, and I always tell everybody that's the first story I tell them.
Oh my God. I mean, we're talking about a place that there's very little light anyway. There's very little light anywhere around, right? I mean, your house is up on the hillside. It's basically in the woods. You're pretty far away from your neighbors, even, you know, all things considered. And then those woods just they extend so far back, and it is black in those woods even during the day, man. And if you're somebody or you're something that wants to hide out and have, you know, free reign to run all through miles and miles of you know, woods in Pennsylvania, that's a hell of a place to go hide.
Well, there's nothing for miles back there. I mean, honestly, I think you could probably walk. Now you'd probably have to use some navigation. I think you could probably get up to Elton Road.
You can
going through the woods, through the woods.
You go up to the is it Topper Road that runs across there?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's one of the paths that I was alluding to when I was talking about the satanic panic cabins. Is that those back ways and I cut off at Salix, but through Salix is where you get into Topper Road and stuff like that. That you can make it from essentially Elton to Mineral Point without hitting a main road.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you go on a main road, you're crossing a main road. You're not walking down a main road.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot of land. For sure.
It absolutely is. You ain't seeing that down here in the Fertile Crescent of PA.
No,
that much.
Yeah. Now, I mean, look, I don't. We got to end this on a good note. And the only thing I think we can pivot to before we get into the Hall of Fame and wrap this up is just telling a little bit of wrestling stories about growing up in the area, Groz. And I mean, I know you and I got involved in pro wrestling as kids, and it just stuck with us our whole life, man. But do you have any memories of other than watching those old NWA tapes with Leo and stuff like that? Do you have any other memories of catching some wrestling growing up?
My dad, we would always watch WCW. They would show it on Sundays, and I remember we would come home from church and it would be on.
That's great.
We'd always watch WCW.
So I basically go ahead.
Or probably my fondest was Saturday night's main event. Back when second grade, I had Kevin Smay, God bless him, as a teacher, and he was into it. And I just remember we would always go in there, on Saturday night's main event and talk about it the following Monday about, Hogan doing this or this and that. And that was definitely pretty cool.
That's great. Yeah. I'm
going to have to jump off here in a second. So I just needed to rehash what I had said, that you two were big cogs in my first renaissance back into pro wrestling. And it was mainly because the Gras had said, hey, Triple H is coming back at this Royal Rumble, and I heard he gained 30 pounds of muscle. And so I went to the Gras' house to watch that Royal Rumble that Mr. Perfect ended up in the Final Four in. And then, Triple H wins that. And then in the pay-per-view afterward is when we had the NWO. And then we watched that WrestleMania 18 at the Graz's living room and did not realize that we had watched one of the most iconic matches of all time sitting next to each other, which is really, really wild. And the fact that, go ahead.
Just a quick interject. The very first TNA pay-per-view was at the house.
I was just going to say, and the fact that we watched probably the first month of those TNA monthly pay-per-views is absolutely insane. It wasn't good enough for us to keep shelling out $10 a month for, even if we were splitting it 3 or 4 ways. But we absolutely were there for night one, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, Shamrock and Killings, man. We talked about that on the pod a little bit.
And so on that one, I'm signing off, gentlemen. It's been real.
All right, man. I appreciate you being here. So the other things I had from just a wrestling standpoint were, you know, watching WrestleMania with Hogan and the Warrior next door with Pat. And I think Brad might have been there too at that point whenever we were watching that, but everything was, you know, we'd have to get the VHS tape from somebody, right? And usually it was Aaron, you know, the guy you referenced earlier about playing the pinball games. Usually it was that. We'd have to run up to his house sometime in the morning and get the VHS tape of whatever show was the previous night. And we did that a lot, dude. And sometimes I remember there being times where we'd be sitting around waiting for him to call us, or we'd be calling him over and over and over again. The phone's just ringing and ringing as he's not home. And we would walk up there and bang on the door, hoping he's there so that we could get the VHS tape and watch whatever pay-per-view was before that. But I specifically remember I very much remember the Power and Glory versus LOD feud, because I was completely convinced at that point in my life that Power and Glory were going to kill the Legion of Doom at that pay-per-view, and then they got killed in like 10 seconds. But you know, just having to, like, you know, go find somebody that had the VHS tape, you know, from the show, because it was so expensive to order the pay-per-views on your own, and that was just a wild time to be a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. It was.
Yeah,
it wasn't as it was nowadays.
Yeah. So, okay, man. So let's get into this Hall of Fame thing, and we'll wrap it up. I kind of just wanted to give some shout outs here. We want to end this on a great note, man. We want to give some shout outs to people from the area that we really haven't already mentioned, especially Liberty Park people. You know, and the first person I wanted to say was, look, I'll say his first and last name because I'm going to give him a shout out here, is Paul Myers, man. I mean, Paul retired to the park, hands down one of the top 3 funniest people I've ever met in my life.
Dude, one of the nicest, greatest guys ever.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
A phenomenal guy. Would do anything for anybody. Like you said, funny. Just a really, really great individual.
Yeah. Yeah. You got anybody you want to put in the Hall of Fame here?
I got to go with Martha and Art Swope.
Yeah.
They played such a pivotal role in so many of our lives. You know, almost acting as a second set of parents to so many of us.
Yeah.
Through all those years.
I mean, I had Art and Martha down here too. You know, just the fact that they put up with us a lot, man. There were times where we were not the easiest kids in the world to put up with, but I mean, Art, you know, thank you for everything you did, man, and giving us these incredible memories and putting up with us all the time, man. That was just an unbelievable childhood that we had, man. I think that's a great one to end on, a great one to put a bow on here, just to put Paul Myers and Art and Martha Swope in the Liberty Park, the unofficial official Liberty Park Hall of Fame. So I mean that. Go ahead.
I'd also have to throw out our parents.
Yeah.
You know, my parents, your parents, and Willie's parents.
Yeah, they did a lot for all of us, man. And that's for sure.
We put them through a lot, and they put up a lot for all of us.
I know they did. They really did, man. I was telling my Aunt Carol about that too when I was talking to her earlier. Just the fact that we had such a great childhood, you know, in that area, and you know, it just was an amazing time to be a kid and to be in that small community where there really weren't too many problems with other people in the area. You know, we didn't really have any issues with anybody. You know, everybody in that local community pretty much got along with each other. And, you know, those summers were endless, man. It was just a wonderful time to be a kid. And I could never ask for a better childhood than the one that I had.
Right. I know. I absolutely agree 100%.
Sure. Okay, well, thank you for Gross for being here, man. You know, it's great to kind of, you know, sit down. I know we haven't had a chance to hang out in a while with COVID and everything, and then, you know, trying to figure out a time to get out to Phoenix and hang out with you guys again. But it's been awesome, dude, just to sit here and you know, rap a little bit about a lot of the stories that we had. I know there's a million stories that we haven't even touched on yet, but we'll have to keep those for another show so we don't go, you know, too long here with that. But I mean, I know you and I can talk here for another 20 hours about all the stuff, you know, growing up in Farmore, going to Farmore and Pappy's and all that kind of stuff. But we'll save all that stuff for another episode, and we'll definitely do another Liberty Park show at some point.
Definitely looking forward to it, and hopefully, you know, down the road here, I can hop on, one of the other podcasts with you guys.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I don't watch as much wrestling as I used to, just because we've had our discussions why, but I still got my 2 cents worth. So
yeah, the thing too is we're starting to talk more and more about doing like career retrospectives on people too. So that's stuff that is in your wheelhouse, that we watched 20 years ago. So that might be something that we can definitely do for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well,
cool.
I appreciate you guys having fun, and I look forward to hearing the playback.
Yeah, for sure, man. I want to thank Aunt Carol too, for being here, and thank my mom for all the amazing pictures that she sent over and all her notes. Look, I don't know how often we're going to do these Andretti After Dark shows, but look, please check out the Podski, rate, review, download. Baker, he's doing a lot of stuff right now with those Vanderpump Rules review shows with his wife. I think they might be done now, but they had a lot of really good audio with that stuff. So keep an eye out too for me and Mongoose doing Tooth and Nail and Hot Shots Wrestling Alliance. And again, you can find us on social media. The Instagram is @the_Podski, YouTube @the_Podski, all one word. You can find me on Instagram too, Cambria County Coroner, all one word. But thanks for listening, man. That was amazing. Probably also, therapeutic. We'll catch you next time. So, Graz, go ahead and ring the bell, Graz.
Ding, ding.
Yeah! It goes to the universe. It goes to Mars. It goes to Neptune. It goes to Pluto. I know you and all them planets, Jack. Because I know everything about you. I know your strengths. And I know your weaknesses, yeah.
She took my credit card. She took my horse. She took my money. She went to Hawaii and spent $5,000 on assorted men and papaya juice, Jack.
Will you stop? And the t-shirts are too tight too, Billy. But the cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah. I don't know.
It's still real to me, damn it.
This is Stone Cold ET, and I want to order a couple cheeseburgers, and that's the bottom line.